Gale perched awkwardly among his party, confusion sharply etched across his face. He lunges into a question, but a sudden interruption slams his voice shut. Cash lunges forward, jaw clenched and snarls, "You're fired." Gale devours the words, shock detonating behind his eyes. He blurts why, utterly stunned as the sudden news slams into him. His party member, Melissa, clamps a cruel laugh down. She sneers openly, tearing into his pitiful, bewildered expression. The whole party turns on him, swarming in to torment him without mercy. Gale snaps upright, eyes blazing, voice cutting through the air as she demands to know what's going on. Cash sneered at the other's surprise, his face an icy mask. He snaps, does Gale seriously have no idea why? Gale rewinds 3 years of relentless dedication, watching every hour of hard work flash past. Cash leans back, sneering that he's too dull to catch on. He bellows that Gale's curso-facer class is the absolute worst. He sneers that Gale is worthless, only good for churning out debuff items. Cash grins and announces he's the lowest level member. Gale swears his gear was the engine that drove him to victory. Cash listens, eyes half-lidded, boredom pouring off him. Gale slams a strange trinket onto the table, daring anyone to believe not everything in his pack is edible. He thrust a grotesque necklace of eyeballs into view, and they recoiled in raw, animal terror. Cash stopped him dead with a razor-sharp, commanding stare. A new woman storms in as Cash flings his tools aside. He slams his palm down and declares their new support mage, Mora Glaris. Cash Bose storms the field, wielding buffs like weapons and crushing debuffs without breaking a sweat. Mora slips into the circle and murmurs a low, steady greeting to her new adventuring party. The whole party is instantly smitten the moment the stunning newcomer strides in. Cash smirks and taunts, "You get it now, Gale." He drives the finishing blow home, they don't need him. Patrons hissed and snickered, branding the poor guy's class useless. Gale stammers staggered, crushed beneath a tidal wave of public humiliation. It claws at them, begging for just one more chance. He yanks open his satchel, revealing battered curse tools pulsing with raw power. Norris, the black mage, locks his gaze on him, eyes like polished obsidian, utterly void of feeling. Luke the bandit watches with bored indifference, his stare unmoved by anything around him. Melissa's face snapped into an icy sneer of pure contempt. Gale hurled a desperate plea into the air, cold silence swallowed it. Cash's face snaps, shut into an icy mask of dismissal. He slammed the question at Gale, does she think they're making a mistake? A memory bursts to life, Gale always had his team's back. Gale snaps that their mistake isn't his concern. Betrayal seared Gale's heart, hot tears sprang to his eyes. He remembers how merely being near them ignited a fierce, simple joy in his chest. He once clung to the dream they'd be together forever. Cash sneered, taunting that he'd opened a whole store just for cursive writing tools. Melissa cackled, taunting that his designs would summon every weirdo. Nor his vows to plaster the streets with ads flaunting his catastrophic sense of style. Luke spits out a weak, backhanded parting barb. Mora drank in the cruel exchange, lips clamped shut and utterly silent. Gale's breath catches, then steadies. He finally steels himself, stares down the hard truth and accepts it. He walks away electrified but empty, the thrill of working with you ringing hollow. Outside, Gale seethed, muttering under his breath, each word crackling with frustration. He storms off, rage roaring in his chest, as he turns his back on his former comrades. A jolt rips through him as he realizes they never paid him. Boiling with rage after working for free, he storms out. He steals one final, breath-held look back into the end. He spots them laughing together, utterly carefree. His face snaps into stone as a fresh, shadow-black resolve ignites in his eyes. He vows to banish this mess himself. He snatches a special paper talisman from his sleeve. He already knew they'd slam the door on his offer of help. He'd stealthily imbued every piece of their gear with enchantments. He unleashes the spell, certain every ounce of his effort was wasted. A colossal magic circle erupted above his head, crackling with blazing runes. A raw grunt tears from him as feedback energy rips through his body. He crumples to the ground, knocked flat by the backlash. Panting, he remembers curses confused with his gear, turning ordinary equipment into terrifying weapons. He lifted their burdens onto his back and forged them into strength. He feels a raw surge of power slam back into him. A grin erupts across his face as a rush of lightness washes over him. He taps his status and watches concern for them evaporate. He rips through the numbers, calculating the weakness debuff he'd been lugging like dead weight. The veil falls, his true stats blaze into view. He's level 48. The iron-jawed innkeeper towers over the wayward Gale. She snaps leave and he scrambles away, stammering frantic apologies. He bolts out of the Silver Wolf Pavilion. Out in the city, he unfurls like a coiled spring, freedom exploding through his veins. He spun his gaze around the room, heart hammering, torn between a dozen options as he hunted for his next move. Flat broke, he clutched nothing but a pack of cursed tools. He weaves through the bustling marketplace, eyes razor-sharp as he takes in every stall, face, and sound. A vendor's question about the booth struck him like lightning, sparking a brilliant plan. Cash's mocking taunts about the store slam into my head. He bursts out, admitting he's always burned with the dream of opening his own store. He dreams of ripping off his chains and living completely on his own terms. He can plunge into research and forge anything his mind dares to dream now. A true, hopeful smile blooms across his face. He bursts with exhilaration, electrified by the wild, unexpected future ahead. He bolts out, teeth clenched, dead set on earning some cash. The scene snaps back to the Silver Wolf Pavilion Inn. The camera slams into a tight close-up of the howling wolf crest. A massive feast crashes onto the table before the adventuring party. Melissa inhales deeply and exclaims how utterly refreshing the calm feels now that the gale has passed. Don't mistake Chide's cash for mercy. He didn't hand it over because he was soft on him. Luke finally admits he should have been kicked out ages ago. Morris fell silent, every muscle taut as she studied her new party. Norris and Luke explode into a lewd, raucous guffaw. Melissa dropped the bomb. Gale used to enchant their gear. A colossal, intricately woven magical seal detonates into existence above them. Panic rips through the party as their equipment bursts into an unnatural glow. Mora's eyes snap wide. She knows this roaring surge of magic for what it is, a powerful dispel. The magic circle explodes into a storm of light. The spell's work is done. A rustic barrel squats atop the table. A bowl of snacks perches beside it. Silence swallowed the scene, a held breath before chaos erupted. In an instant, the party crumples, sapped of strength and scrambling in confusion. My eyes snap wide as sudden realization crashes over me. She zeroes in its a high-level dispel. Melissa erupts, hurling a fierce accusation at Gale. He's retaliating. Luke's jaw clenches. Cold resignation makes him wish they'd killed him. Mora snaps, insisting their theory makes no sense. She scoffs and declares the dispel spell can't touch them. Gale must have ripped his own spell to shreds. It hits her he never meant to hurt them. Cash scoffs, derision burning in his voice, convinced Gale wields no power. Melissa nods fiercely, fire in her eyes, vowing to beat him up. Mora lunges forward, trying to slam the brakes on their reckless nonsense. She claws at their attention, voice breaking as she yells. It was an attack. Cash roared his authority, bending the room to his will as the party leader. He thundered that Gale is now their enemy. Nor is gleefully pushing to burn Gale alive. Luke scoffs, branding his weakness a mere figment of his imagination. He swore he'd sever every last finger from Gale's hand. The party erupts into violent, screaming bickering. Mora knows their weakness wasn't imagined, it was real, and it cut deep. She felt it too, a faint, ghostly tug at the edge of her awareness. The instant the dispel flared to life. She felt their stats plummet in an instant. In a heartbeat, the permanent buff was ripped away. Her mind races as she scrambles to grasp the impossible implications. Melissa lunges forward, concern blazing in her eyes. Are you okay? What's wrong? Mora's jaw clenches. She knows cursifiers can't buff. If his tools were capable, they'd unleash a tremendous, world-shaking force. That power blew past anything a regular curse officer could muster. She silently wrestles with this terrifying thought. Cash calls snaps the squabbling teammates into line. Melissa nuzzles the cash, clutching the bills to her chest like a treasured hug. The others glared, contempt carved into every line of their faces. Could they even dare call themselves S-rank without him? Doubt coils in Mora. Could this really be possible? Gale conceals a storm of raw power. Far away, Gale rips himself free from the city and streaks into the distance. Cash cuts Gale off mid-sentence and slams the conversation into a new direction. He snaps at the party, commanding them to lock their sights on tomorrow. His team leans in, breaths held, every eye locked on him, desperate for the words he's about to unleash. They erupt into a wild roar, itching to prove their strength. Their first S-rank quest slams into them, a towering behemoth. Melissa cracks a fierce grin, eyes blazing as she braces for a real challenge. Don't you dare laugh off that so-called difficulty. Luke brags they could pull it off with their eyes closed. Moore alone watches, deep unease clawing at his gut. The party hoists their mugs aloft, erupting into a roaring, triumphant toast. They haven't caught on to the truth yet. They exiled him, clueless about the hurricane of strength coiled inside him. They don't even realize the true weakness that's devouring them. Mora slams the glass back and drains it in one long, savage gulp. She banged the empty mug down on the table, its ringing crash tearing through the silence. Meanwhile, Gale explodes into a sprint after the thieving bird. A title card slams into view, announcing the story. A pumpkin-headed man leans in and asks Gale if she wants a stall. Gale practically explodes, shouting, "I do." He storms into the Merchants Guild. The best spot demands 4 gold a day. Gale plants himself before the guild master's desk. He fumbles through his threadbare wallet, heart racing as he counts the pitiful coins left. His entire fortune, 3 silver coins. He scans the stalls and snaps, where's the cheaper Market Street. He stakes his claim and opens shop there instead. He slammed his window display case down with a loud clunk. He just set up shop in a stall that groaned with age and reeked of grime. The kind guildmaster pressed a use kit into his hands. Gale hatches a razor-sharp plan for his first day of business. He's hawking off his remaining curse tools. His mind races as he hunts for the perfect price to set. In a heartbeat, he sizes up his business plan, mind racing through risks and rewards. He'll only charge the bare cost of materials, no markup, no profit. He spreads his wares into a chaotic sprawl. The guild master bursts back into the guild hall, eyes blazing, then stops short. He'd forgotten something. He glares at the messy stall, contempt burning in his eyes. He clocked Gale, roaring that the whole setup was a disaster. He demands a proper layout for the display. His hands blur, snapping each item into perfect order with surgical precision. He slid the necklace onto the display hook, the pendant catching the light and daring anyone to look away. The stall erupts into a proper, full-fledged shop right before your eyes. Gale floods him with gratitude, voice cracking, as he thanks him again and again for the help. He leans in and drops one last, razor-sharp piece of business advice. He shoots a last, hopeful wave and strides off toward whatever comes next. Tears ripped from Gale's eyes as his kindness smashed straight into him. Memories of his old parties, scorn slam into him like a punch to the gut. He summons a razor-sharp resolve and snaps his collar into place. He stares down at his favorite eyeball necklace. Cornered by reality, he steels himself and makes the painful decision to sell it. He hoists the grotesque piece onto a hook. A grin splits his face as he bellows, "It's time to sell." He swallows hard, confessing to himself that nerves coil in his gut. He paces, anxiety clawing at his chest, as he imagines every reaction people might hurl at his work. He slaps his cheeks, jolting himself awake and priming every nerve for action. He inhaled like a fighter, one deep, steady breath that slammed the panic out of his nerves. He roared his sales pitch at the crowd, every word landing like a hammer blow. A family in the market snaps their heads around to stare. He bellows, calling everyone to snatch up his debuff items. He bellows his one-of-a-kind wares are dirt cheap. Gale flashes a warm grin and sweeps a customer into his stall with an inviting, booming welcome. A woman narrows her eyes and demands to know why his tools are needed. He lays out their advantage, anyone can use them. His words land like a thunderclap. The gathered adventurers snap to it, nodding, they understand. The newcomer's jaw dropped, his prices were shockingly low. Gale snaps that he charges for nothing but his labor. He sweeps his arm wide, unveiling a dazzling spread of wares. He locks it in, he's buying the cheap items. He stopped dead as something else seized his attention. He leans in, voice razor-sharp, and demands to know about the one-of-a-kind sword and the barrel. Gale howls in, shredding agility and stripping away your armor. It also supercharges every other stat by 10%. He inhales sharply, about to drop the final, crucial detail. He roared, "The sword is cursed." The man's fingers betrayed him. The blade tumbled from his grip and crashed to the floor in a deafening clatter. He locked eyes with Gale and demanded she confirm what he just said. The adventurer scratches his head, annoyance flaring like a struck match. He scoffs, who in their right mind would knowingly buy a cursed item. Gale spins on a dime and slaps on the label, interior design. He cocks his head at the bizarre new sales pitch, suspicion and curiosity clashing as he sizes it up. He grudgingly concedes the grotesque design isn't so bad. He shells out his cash like it's his last hope, determined to drive the evil spirits away. Gale thrusts 3 dispelled talismans into their hands as a gift. He rewinds his winning sales move, relishing the exact tactic that sealed the deal. Snap on the spiky skull necklace and watch your stats explode by 50%. Strap on the fur-lined boots and your agility explodes by 150%. Spy crossbow pins every shot dead center as stacked stat boosts surge through its systems, turning it into a precision powerhouse. Satisfied, the customer bursts out the door, a gleaming crossbow slung over his shoulder like a victorious prize. Gale's blood runs cold. He's given away way too many dispels. He shrugs it off, murky confidence clinging to him like a shadow. Another customer leans in and fires off a question about a specific cursed tool. Gale's mind snaps to legends of berserkers clad in cursed armor. That moment lit the fuse for the business model he built on total transparency. Rumors explode into a roaring crowd that swarms his stall. He bellows, hawking his wares and dangling freebies. The sun dips, setting the city ablaze in molten gold. As the sun sank, his stall sat stripped bare. Grinning, he hoists his now featherlight back. He relives a customer's one-of-a-kind compliment. A roar erupts down the street, slamming into his ears and snapping him to attention. A desperate mob barrels toward him, hands clawing for the dispel talismans. Their hope shatters the moment he admits he's sold out. Gale's jaw drops. The talismans were the main attraction. He froze, shock knifing through his chest as he stared at the dejected crowd. They fling themselves at his feet, begging him to curse their gear into talismans. He bolts out of the ferocious haggling. The scene rips away from the bustling market, its clamor shrinking into the distance. It slipped into the local tavern just down the street. An adventurer goads his friend into trying on a cursed ring. The friend erupts in laughter and slides the ring onto his finger. He snaps his gaze to the ring and scans his status as it pulses with a soft, eerie glow. His face snaps into a mask of pure, jaw-dropping shock. He gasped, stunned by the ring's staggering power. His friends freeze, staring at his status as bewilderment floods their faces. The ring catapulted every one of his stats up by 50%. A party member reels, knocked breathless by that titanic surge of power. They're floored that a tiny ring can deliver this much power. An old man perches on the table, contentment etched into every wrinkle of his face. He clings to the idea that it isn't a curse so long as he never takes it off. The first adventurer lined in, hanging on the chatter with razor-sharp focus. He spun to his friend, eyes blazing, and demanded why the temple's prices were so outrageously high. His friend snaps, fury crackling, scolding him for daring to even think of reselling. His face twists into a venomous sneer at the mere thought of the temple priests. The priests snarl for gold coins, refusing to cast a dispel until they're paid. They all nod, no one can deny it. The curse officer is terrifyingly skilled. Clutching the ring, the man whispers the question that eats him, "Who am I?" His friend freezes, brow furrowing as he scrambles to pin down where he's seen that face. Deja vu slams him. That cursor is hauntingly familiar. Gale once absorbed every curse meant for his party and carried them on his own back. Not a single soul suspected he was secretly forging S-rank items right under everyone's noses. Whispers of the crucifixer ignite and race through every corner of the city. The story rips the clock back a few hours. Brace yourself, the next scene is about to explode onto the stage. They slammed a dense, hushed forest into view. A thunderous blow rips the calm to shreds. A colossal tree has toppled, its trunk ripped into jagged splinters strewn across the ground. A thunderous blast tears out from the heart of the forest canopy. Cash is hurled through the air, gasping for breath. He crumples to the ground, defeated and bleeding. Luke spits a curse as a thin trickle of blood snakes down from his nose. Battered and bruised, Norris demanded to know why this was happening. Mora and Melissa gaped, disbelief crashing over them, eyes wide and jaws slack. Scarlet beads spill from Cash's mouth, staining the earth beneath him. He hauls his colossal greatsword through the dirt, the blade carving a deep furrow as it drags. He claws himself upright, bracing on the blade. Their opponent explodes into view, a single, hulking ogre, massive and roaring. Cash erupts into a guttural roar, raw, helpless fury ripping through the air. He screams, disbelief exploding in his chest as their failure slams into him. The manga's title card blazes into view. A flashback slams us into Gale's room. He's hunched over his desk, feverishly working. Luke's jaw clenched. He choked out whether they could risk taking Mora on an S-rank quest. Cashin insists she'll slide right in and be perfectly fine. The party locks eyes with Mora and declares, "We're counting on you." Cash watched, his stare forged into stern, unshakable confidence. He zeroes in on the ogre and howls, perfect target. He smirks and dares them to warm up on the beast. The battle explodes as Cash rips a thunderous war cry from his chest. Luke snaps his bow to full draw, muscles coiling and eyes locking on the target as he readies himself to let the arrow fly. The party barrels straight at the towering ogre. Luke fires an arrow that careens off course, screams past the bullseye, and thuds uselessly into the dirt. Melissa's scream ripped through the room as she tore into her party's incompetence. She sneered, hurling the word wimp straight at the ogre. The ogre's blow ripped her off her feet and hurled her backwards. Cash spat a curse and slammed into a tree. He thundered at Norris, cast the spell. Not a single voice begged for one more moment. His spell sputtered and coughed, spitting out a pathetic little flame. Cash snorted, laughing the useless magic off like a bad joke. He clenched his jaw, teeth grinding as raw frustration ripped through him. The ogre loomed over him, coiling to smash him flat. At the very last second, he darted aside, slipping free by a hair. Mara bolted forward to check if he was okay. Cash snapped around, eyes cutting into her with a lethal glare. He barked, "Start casting your buffs, now." Mora snapped that she'd been buffing them. All along, she never stopped. Her mana sputtered, nearly drained. She plunged her staff into the earth. A blinding light detonated around her, engulfing her in a searing halo. A blazing magic circle burst into being at Cash's feet. She boomed, "I've doubled your stats." A roar of confidence ripped through Cash as he barreled forward. He unleashed a thunderous challenge at the monster. The ogre's voice rumbled as he asked if he wanted to play. Cash's grin exploded. He knew his strike had found its mark. The ogre plucked his blade from the air with brutal, casual ease. It nonchalantly plunged a finger into its nose, radiating bored contempt. Cash gaped as his punch slammed into an unyielding defense and stopped cold. He was hoisted into the air as if he weighed nothing. The ogre catapulted him through the air like a discarded toy. Cash slammed into the ground, dazed, humiliation searing through him. He unleashed his blazing fury on Mora. He spat at her, "You're a useless, failed mage." Mora erupted, refusing to take a single one of his insults. She vowed she'd try something else. She snatched the scroll from Gale. She prayed it would sap the yogurt's strength. Cash snatched her, clamping down to stop her from using it. He scoffed, branding Gale's items worthless. Mora's breath caught as Gale's letter about them crashed back into her mind. She stared him down and demanded to know why Cash had suddenly snapped into defiance. The sight of her snapped his old strategy back into place. Crushed, she crumpled to the ground, every breath a ragged whisper. Cash barked, "Gale's behind all of this." He snarled that the dispel wasn't a cure at all, but a curse. Melissa didn't hesitate. She grabbed the excuse and ran with it. Norris pinned his weakness on the curse. Luke plastered on a knowing grin and sold everyone the lie that he'd seen it coming from the start. They declared the day over. Cash's chest tightened as one raw question echoed in his head: why was this happening? They wore him down with desperate pleas and hard logic until he finally ordered a retreat. They bolted for their lives the instant the ogre's attention slipped. Cash roared everyone into action, slamming the blame squarely on the curse. Morrow recoiled, disgust and fury ripping through him at their cowardice. She scoffed, refusing to accept their S-rank status. A terrible idea exploded into Cash's mind. He jabbed a finger at Mora and snapped that Mora was unhurt. They named her the decoy. They waved cheerfully and strode off, leaving her standing alone. The four of them bolted, lungs burning, every frantic step a fight to stay alive. Mara stood abandoned, with only Yoga for company. Pity flickered in the monster's eyes when they saw her. Rage exploded from her in a piercing scream. She hurled the scroll at them, snarling, "Morons." It burst to life in a blinding, brilliant flash. A colossal plume of smoke blasted into the sky. Mora staggered back, disbelief scorching her as its power smashed every limit. She melted into the billowing smoke, letting it cloak her. She exploded into a sprint, tearing through the forest. The party barreled into a sunlit glade and collapsed, finally stealing a hard-earned moment of peace. A guttural groan tore from Cash as utter defeat snuffed out every last spark of fight. The others erupted, railing against their deal. They zeroed in on Mora, pinning the blame squarely on them. Luke and Norris finally confessed they'd fallen off. Certainty hit Cash. He was sure he knew the reason. Melissa pinned every fault on Mora, making her the scapegoat for everything. They scoffed and tossed her reasoning aside like a scrap of paper, acting like it meant nothing. She folded her arms and sulked as they breezed past, pretending she didn't exist. Norris locked onto their weak point, then unleashed her buffs. Luke sneered, ripping into Norris for his faltering streak. Cash jabbed a finger at Gale and snarled that the whole mess was her fault. More of their pursuers finally closed in on them. Cash swaggered over and smirked at her. He erupted with praise as she sent the ogre running. Exhaustion crushed Mora, leaving her utterly spent. Cash's gaze snapped to something cradled in her arms. He demanded to know about the strange little creature. Meanwhile, Gale dove into the city market, reveling in the spice-scented chaos and the roar of shouting vendors. He mounted him, riding with wild, blissful abandon. He'd bet his last coin that running the stall would be an absolute blast. He hungered for a steady stream of diverse customers. Crowds surged past, snatching only quick, dismissive glances at his wares. Most adventurers dismiss it as just another talisman. A nearby door burst open, its hinges rattling and the whole room jolting. She swept out, every step overflowing with regal, effortless elegance. Gale zeroed in on her, curiosity burning in her eyes. Later, he burst into the guildmaster's chamber, every step crackling with intent. Grinning ear to ear, he asked for a new stall spot. He poured out his plight to the master. A bolt of genius jolted the guildmaster. Two elegant ladies sauntered together, every graceful step a quiet celebration. The affluent district roared to life, crowds pouring down its gilded streets. Gentlemen traded sharp barbs as a cart thundered past. Gale stormed into the noble's district. His new stall landed smack in the perfect spot. He can tell noble worships fashion and tosses utility aside. He envisions nobles descending on his stall in a glittering tide. His daring, offbeat taste was about to explode onto the high-fashion scene. He hungers to win a commission from the castle. But a darker memory explodes into view, flaring for a heartbeat before vanishing. The memory of that creepy adventurer, eyes bloodshot, slams into him. That intense stare's memory still claws at my mind. He admits anyone would freeze in terror. He instantly crushes the worry and forges ahead. Electric with energy, he snaps upright, draws a hard breath, and braces to meet the new day. He throws open the door, grinning like a showman, and welcomes his very first customers with contagious joy. A cloaked woman hovers nearby, her eyes tracking every move. Her gaze snaps to his stall, curiosity sparking like a live wire. "My S-ring party axed me." Mora slams her fist down and demands an explanation, her voice crackling with fury. The wolfpack greets her with a hail of venomous jeers. She flinches as the words land, their vicious insults. Cash staggers in, battered and bloodied, their failed quest etched across every bruise. The shriveling effect snaps away, and the ogre swells back into its full, terrifying bulk. The ogre surges back into its full, towering, hulking form. Cash roared, shoving the fight onto her shoulders. Handle it alone. The party recoils as the ogre slams its foot into the earth, a thunderous quake rocking them back. Spineless cowards, they scheme to sacrifice Mora. The entire party bolts, hurtling through the chaos in a desperate race for their lives. The forlorn ogre rips the silence apart and reveals it's a vegetarian. Days later, they burst back into the inn. The wolf pack falls shattered, scattered and silent, their howls dying in the night. They're caked in grime, throats burning with thirst, and every muscle screaming from exhaustion. Their stench crashes through the common room, seeping into every corner. Mora's voice slices the air like ice as she spits that their fate is their own making. Cash barked for service, every syllable dripping with entitlement. He and Luke ripped the ending to shreds, unleashing a relentless barrage of furious complaints. The innkeeper strides up, jaw clenched and eyes cold as steel. She slams a single glass onto the table, the impact tearing through the silence. One lone glass of water must quench every last one of them. They erupt into a thunderous roar of outrage at how they're being treated. She sneers, they're low-life deadbeats who never pay. The innkeeper rooted himself like bedrock, utterly unfazed. Their advance payment evaporated. She snaps, ordering them to pay what they owe. Cash locks his gaze on his empty coin purse as panic explodes in his chest. His hand trembles, humiliation crashing over him the instant the truth lands. His clueless comrades shove the bill at him, demanding he pay. Cash scrambles, grasping at any excuse he can find. Melissa burned through their money, lavishing every cent on herself. Norris and Luke stood empty-handed, their equipment had vanished. You should have seen it, Cash's custom greatsword lay ruined. The wolf pack howls over empty pockets, every last coin gone. The innkeeper leaned forward, pinning them with a sharp gaze as he asked for their decision. She barked 6 silver for their stay. Thirst still gnawed at Melissa. She lunges and rips the only water away, clutching it to her chest like a lifeline. Morris snaps an order for a drink and food at the bar. Melissa downs the entire glass herself. Morris snaps, "Why are you all staring at me?" They unleash a wave of shame on her for refusing to share her money. She roars, "My money is mine." A memory slams into them, the arrogant vow they shattered roaring back. Cash scrambles to contort his earlier words, desperate to flip their meaning. Melissa closes in, a razor-sharp grin curling on her lips. She looms over Mara, voice cold as steel, trying to bully him into paying. They swarm Gale, hurling accusations and pinning every fault on his shoulders. Cash lunges, desperate to snatch our money pouch. They sneer at her, taunting that she's the one pulling in all the cash. Mora's restraint shatters. She's been pushed past the point of no return. The cashiers hissed a cold, menacing threat under their breath. He sneers, branding her a pathetic support mage. He hurls a cutting insult. Her fist connects with his jaw, and the taunt dies on his lips. She drives a crushing blow into his jaw, snapping his head back and rattling his teeth. The rest of the party froze, every voice ripped away by a stunned, suffocating silence. Cash exploded into the air, scattering across the room. He hurtles into a pile of barrels. Melissa jerks as pure, volcanic fury rips through her. She snatches a wooden stool and swings it with brutal force. She spits a vicious insult and drives her strike home. Mora smirks and sidesteps the clumsy strike without breaking a sweat. Melissa's jaw drops, stunned by the blistering, impossible speed she just unleashed. A cold jolt seizes her. She realizes she only struck Mora's cape. They ripped past in a blur. Her hood falls away, exposing a face carved with fury. They scramble to douse Mora's blazing rage. She explodes into a piercing scream, hurling a razor-sharp "shut up" straight at them. The mages barreled toward her, menace crackling with every step. She crushes their glowing magic circle underfoot. Their mighty spell roared to life, then was snuffed out the instant it left their hands. She rockets into the sky, unleashing one last, devastating strike. She slams her heel down, pulverizing them both underfoot. The other at Patron's watch froze, mouth hanging open in stunned disbelief. She gasped, lungs aflame, snatching a shaky breath after the fight. She burst out of the brawl, adrenaline humming through her. She felt shockingly refreshed. She shoots a sheepish apology at the innkeeper, who can't help but smirk. Her breath catches as one final piece of business slams into her memory. She beams and cheerfully quits the party. The camera snaps back to Gale's brand new stall. A highborn lady's lip curls as she brands his wares eccentric. A noble woman zeroes in on Gale's basilisk lamp, fascination crackling in her gaze. He lauds her taste, then yanks back the cover to expose the cursed lantern. His customer staggers back, eyes going wide, when he realizes it's cursed. The butler lunges forward, razor calm, seizing control of the situation. Gale erupts in a startled yelp, then instantly retracts it. The butler snaps, accusing him of saddling them with a curse. Gale scoffs, insisting it's nothing more than interior decoration. The butler leans in, every muscle taut, listening like a hawk to Gale's explanation. He sits, eyes razor-sharp, carving the noble's nature apart in his head. The lady slammed a stack of bills down, more than he'd asked for. His handmade creations fly off the shelves, while his consumables sit untouched, gathering dust. He stretches like a coiled spring, then explodes into packing for the day. He snaps his hand into a tight fist, a heavy gloom knotting in his chest. He still shudders, remembering the first wave of revulsion, his own work unleashed. People gape at his designs like strange curiosities, but they never warm to them. A cold doubt claws at him, are his own tastes strange? He clenched the bracelet until his knuckles went white. A voice slices the quiet, asking, "You closing up?" She slips up behind his stall and closes in on him like a shadow. A stunning woman glides forward, a gentle smile curving across her lips. A burning suspicion claws at him. Could she be a noble in disguise? He locked his gaze on her, curiosity sparking across his face. A female knight presses into the corner's shadow and peers around it, eyes locked on every move. Tonight, they study the interaction as it unfolds, thoughts honed into razor-sharp focus. He throws up his hands, wailing that every design he creates turns out weird. She explodes into a radiant grin and proclaims, "I love it." She squeals, eyes sparkling, and declares one of his rings utterly adorable. He goes numb as it hits him. This is the first compliment he's ever received. Elation floods him, he's beaming, his grin lighting up the room. He exploded with praise for her razor-sharp eye. He's convinced she's a noble masquerading as a commoner. He steels himself and plays it cool, choking down his excitement so he won't blow the surprise. He slashes the price, shouting a last-call discount as he locks up for the night. She confesses, panic flaring, that she left her wallet in the palace. She snaps a hand to her mouth, the instant the slip-up escapes. She winks, mischief flashing, and snaps that she only meant her place. He snaps, "Pay whatever you want." He shoots a sly wink and dubs it a reward for his fan. She nods and slips a coin into his palm. Shock rips through him as his eyes land on a gleaming gold coin. He gaped. She'd just produced a gleaming gold coin. He yells, "Wait just a moment." She grins, hoists the ring like a trophy, and strides away. He waves back, utterly undone by her smile. He reels as a brutal truth slams into him. From the corner, the armored woman fixes him with a blade-sharp glare. He blanked, never explained the curse, or handed out the talismans. His eyes dart wildly in every direction. She's vanished. His breath catches. He realizes the street has gone utterly empty. Panic claws at him. He scrambles, frantic, searching for the next move. He steels himself and insists the ring's curse is weak. It can't touch him. He still remembers its power, how it seared into the world and left marks that never fade. He's gambling that she's rich enough to foot the bill for the temple visit. Dread coils in his gut. Maybe she wasn't joking about the palace. A rough hand yanks the young woman into a shadowed alley. A stern attendant barked at her, tearing into her with a scathing tirade. The attendant snaps, "I secured the night." Royal guards hoist her away as she writhes and fights their grip. The scene snaps to the sprawling royal palace, its towers stabbing into the sky. Guards hover like statues, eerily motionless before the towering, ornate door. The veil drops. It's Princess Carla. The princess puffs her cheeks into a stubborn balloon and glares, every inch of her radiating annoyance. The shot sweeps across the city's rooftops, tiles and antennas carving jagged silhouettes against the sky. Gale strides down the street, hands shoved deep into his pockets. A hand slams onto his shoulder as a voice screams his name. A guard fires questions at him, eyes razor-sharp as he hunts for the suspect. He spun, his features snapping into the wizened face of an old man. Confusion knots the guard's face. He clamps his mouth shut and pulls his question back. He flicks the guard's apology away like dust as the guard stammers a hurried sorry. He slams the dispelled talisman and instantly snaps back into his original form. He snaps back to himself and lets out a long, relieved sigh. He's consumed by one burning question: why is the royal guard after him? He made up his mind. He'd bolt out of town within days. Children swarm him, begging him to pull off a dazzling magic trick. The series title explodes onto a card, demanding your attention. The scene snaps back to the royal palace. Vivian snarled, branding the ring an outright blasphemy against the church. She insists it's essential to rub shoulders with the commoners. Vivian watches, exhaustion etched across her face and disbelief flashing in her eyes. A skull-shaped vase glares from the room's corner, a silent judge watching every move. A mounted animal head glares down from the wall. A chest with a skeletal face glares up from the floor. Vivian can't fathom why she's irresistibly drawn to these things. Vivian Size's reminder slammed into her, dragging the important meeting back into urgent focus. Vivian watches, exhaustion etched into her eyes, and a hard, serious steel burning behind them. Carla can't tear her eyes from the ring gleaming on her finger. She threads the grotesque ring onto her finger. Vivian Plaid's voice trembling, "Don't wear it to the meeting." A sinister tide of black energy erupts from the cursed ring. A tray cradles Gale's simple, mouth-watering meal. He savors each bite, grinning as the flavors hit him, and the meal proves irresistible. He's crushing it. This is totally his element. Memory slams into him. He must get more materials. Armed only with scavenger scraps, he's pushed to his limit. He sets his sights on a distant city and dives headfirst into its quests. He freezes on the stairs as a familiar sound rips through the silence. He slides around the corner, eyes snapping to the source. The wolf pack snarled, demanding a loan of gold pieces. The receptionist flashes a careful smile, bracing to deliver a polite refusal. She slams their failure in their faces, not a single quest completed. The receptionist narrows their eyes and rips into Cash's ogre story. A triumphant grin slices across her face. They baited it straight into the city's jaws. Cash clenched his jaw, coldly branding her nothing more than a desk girl. Ice in her voice, she rips through their recent failures and slams their new debt down like a verdict. From across the room, Gale recoils as fury twists her features. She crushes the reminder about their loan into a furious paper ball and flings it aside like a dare. The entire wolf pack froze, terror pinning them to the spot. Desperation blasted from Cash as he screamed, "It's all Gale's fault." A maniacal grin rips across his face as he zeroes in on his scapegoat. Gale froze, breath stolen, as the outrageous accusation slammed into her like a slap. Melissa snarls their stats have been gutted and buffs just bounce off. A chorus of scoffs erupted as they all branded the new support mage useless. The receptionist heaves a sharp sigh, bracing to dismantle their ignorance. She roars that Mora stands among the city's best support mages. Regret claws at her for steering Mora into that dazzling party. The wolf pack stood frozen, eyes wide and minds spinning, as the news hit them like a thunderclap. Gale's jaw dropped when he discovered Mora wasn't just anyone, she was a major player. His jaw hits the floor, pure, stunned disbelief plastered across his face. The receptionist calls out Gale and snaps to the telltale twitch of his ear. She crowns him the wonderful cursive officer, flawless and forever beyond blame. Her cheeks flamed as she gushed, practically swooning over how priceless his talismans were. Gale's memory paints their interactions in a completely different light. She whips around, voice razor-sharp, demanding they pay their debt first. Cash bellows defiantly, vowing they'll pay every last cent back. The party seals the deal and commits to tackling easier quests. They explode out of the guild hall, fists clenched and tempers blazing. Panic clawed through Gale, they still believe he cursed them. He bolts, determined to vanish before they can find him. He strides toward the guild's towering wooden doors. Outside, he catches sight of 2 royal guards barreling past. The guards buzz with gossip. The princess and Vivian are at each other's throats again. Gale reels, royal guards doing a job like this. He strides down the street, his gaze snapping to a shop. He drops his gaze to his own tattered clothes. He makes a beeline to celebrate a special occasion. The shop bell clatters as the door throws open. In the palace's glittering hall, he hurled his sword onto the marble, rage erupting from his chest. Guards scramble to restrain a furious Vivian, grappling as she lashes out like a storm unleashed. Princess Carla hisses, a cold, venomous whisper choked under her bedsheets. Vivian screams, the grotesque ring is cursed. Carla snaps that she only wants to see what it looks like. She threads the cursed ring onto her finger, destiny clicks shut. A suffocating, sinister energy engulfs the royal bedchamber, pressing its shadow into every corner. Power slammed into them like a freight train, sending Carla and Vivian reeling. A scream rips from the palace tower, tearing through the air. An attendant drops to his knees, pleading with the princess to remove the ring. Vivian's eye flared, a terrifying resolve burning like wildfire. She hoists her sword overhead, blade glinting, poised to sever the finger in one brutal stroke. Shouts of "Defend the princess" rip through every hall and tower of the castle. Princess Carla swept into the meeting hall, flanked by a proud line of delegates. Delegates flooded her with praise for her radiant appearance. One of them's gaze snaps to the ribbon knotted around her finger. Carla erupts into laughter, waving it off as nothing more than a little accident. She sweeps in with a warm smile, pouring steaming tea for each guest like a cherished gift. The lead delegate declines, a sly, sinister grin carving itself across his face. They whip out sweet treats from their homeland instead. Delight surged through the princess the moment the imperial sweets crossed her mind. A servant rips open the massive crate, unleashing a dazzling mountain of desserts into view. The crate is crammed with strange bundles, each one swaddled tight in cloth. Vivian's eyes snap wide, danger slams into focus, and they realize they're under attack. Assassins explode from the shadows, weapons drawn, poised to strike. Venom-tipped bolts hurtle straight for the princess. The assassin swears to deliver her a swift, painless death. The royal guards explode forward, forming a living barricade around her. Carla's scream rips through the air as she clamps her hands over her head, shaking with raw terror. Bolts slam into an invisible magical barrier, erupting into crackling showers of sparks. A hail of projectiles screams in, each one is ripped aside and sent spinning harmlessly away. Their blades sliced the air, the assassins froze, disbelief splintering through them. Vivian and Carla freeze, seized by the same thunderstruck confusion. The assassins loosed another hail of bolts, every shot wasted. The shield devours their attack, wiping it from existence. Carla is swallowed by a pitch-black, cursed barrier. Her eyes lock on the ring glinting on her finger. She still pictures the kind man who sold it to her, his gentle grin burned into her mind. Vivian grits her teeth, frustration coiling into a tight, dangerous spring in her chest. She roared, "Guards, charge," and they slammed into the assassins, hauling them into custody. Vivian hurtles to the princess and explodes with relief. The princess is unharmed. A single cold question gnawed at her. Why would they masquerade as agents of the Empire? The princess watches, concern carved into every line of her face. The lead assassin's eyes go cold as they resolve to find a safe haven. A gilded sigil guards the temple's threshold. They burst into the Hall of the Stars, a vast chamber exploding with glittering starlight. Two men freeze, jaws dropping, as the ring erupts in a surge of power that floors them. Vivian leaned in, locked eyes with the experts, and demanded their assessment. Priest Bishop Uriel thunders his praise, hailing the Maker's peerless mastery. He rips the veil off the ring's cunning double curse, laying bare how its twin snares are woven to trap anyone who dares touch it. But he rips the curtain back and reveals there's even more to it. He hands the final details over to either praise or a wrestling match. Aerosol slams down the verdict. It grants resistance to instant kill attacks. The princess and Vivian reel, mouths gaping as the bombshell sinks in. Aerosol steels himself, poised to unleash the final classification. He roars, the ring is a cursed relic. A tidal wave of professional joy swept the appraiser. Excitement detonated in him, nearly blasting his monocle off his face. Vivian rips into him, blasting him for his unprofessional behavior. It hits her, the angel shield delivers the same effect. Aerosol confirms it, breath ragged and eyes alight, still buzzing from the thrill. Uriel's jaw dropped, so much raw power pulsed from that tiny trinket. Its power rivals nothing, only the Demon Lord's heart dares to match it. The legendary Imperial artifact erupts to unleash matching buffs. The Demon Lord's heart rips the life from whoever dares to wield it. Great power always exacts its due. An iron law of nature reigned over everything, absolute and impossible to bend. But this ring demanded next to nothing in return. Carla leaned in, eyes burning and pressed. Do you remember that young man? Vivian's voice cut through the room. I remember his face, crystal clear. A gasp ripped from her as the princess's true intent snapped into focus. She begged to be the one to hunt him down and drag him before justice. Gratitude burned in the princess. She lunged forward to thank him for his help. The ring radiated a deadly curse, yet it ripped her back from death's grip. She burst out, I want to see him one more time. Elsewhere, the capital cracked awake as dawn ripped across its skyline, flooding the streets with blinding light. Gale erupted into a delighted chuckle, beaming as he cradled his new purchase like a trophy. His new gear screamed utility, battle-ready, and packed with every tool he'd need. He shoved his cursed tools and dagger into his pack with a single, furious motion. A smile lit his face as he seized the moment and strode out. He cast one last, burning glance over the sprawling royal capital. Brisk morning air bit his face, crisp and cool. Down below, the city's residents sprang to life as morning hit the streets. A cold knot in his gut screamed, this might be the last time he sets foot here. He strode down the narrow alley, a smile curling at his lips. The alley ahead gaped, swallowed by a deep, hungry shadow. He froze, every nerve electric, as something stirred in the shadows. Up ahead, someone shivered violently, teeth chattering as the cold gnawed at their bones. Cold and miserable, the wolf pack snapped at one another, their voices sharp as ice. For a heartbeat, recognition flared, their faces tugged at a half-remembered memory. He scoffed and flat out wrote the idea off as impossible. The city streets pulsed with life, crowds surged, and noise rippled through every block. Agar bellowed, ordering more men into the fray. A squad of guards barreled past him without warning. He froze, heartbeat thudding. Why were the royal knights here? Even the capital army surged in, a thunderous wall of steel and boots. His foot slams into something lying on the ground. He halted, his gaze snapping to the poster on the wall. A wanted poster glared at him. Every line matched him down to the last detail. The guard's warning cut through the air. The entire city was being watched. An insult hit him like a slap. He bristled, convinced his taste was flawless. The search had morphed into a punishing, uphill battle. On a night patrol, his eyes snapped to Gale. The night froze, every clue pointed squarely at him as the suspect. He seethed in silence, fiercely guarding his signature style. The night's verdict: he wasn't messy enough. The night brushed him off, and Gale bolted. He spat curses at himself for lingering in the city. At last he burst into the wagon depot beside the gate. Dozens of wagons crowded the square, each one beckoning with a different destination. He toyed with the idea of uprooting himself to hunt for work in a bigger city. He balanced his choice on a knife edge: the glittering bustle of a merchant town or the iron discipline of a military garrison. The driver bellowed a last-minute deal, 2 spots up for grabs. They charged straight for Farm Edge, the agricultural town. The thought of fresh food slammed into him, and his mouth flooded. He burst out, voice crackling with eager fire, "I'll take that spot." Right then another hand shot up, demanding the room's attention. He snapped his head around to find the hooded Mora standing at his side. They locked eyes, and the truth slammed into them: they'd never met before. Mora flashed a grin, greeted him, and spat his name, Gale, like a verdict. Recognition hit him like a thunderclap. She flashed a sly smile and announced, "I'm Mora." He couldn't shake the memory of her pretty face and her massive. Her assets hijacked his gaze. He'd been staring right at her chest. She clamped her hand on his jaw, stared him down, and snapped, "What's massive?" He sank to his knees, begging for forgiveness, only a man. Their wagon thundered out of the city, the journey now underway. They sat breaths tight, the air between them knife-sharp with awkward tension. The capital slipped behind them, its skyline shrinking into a tiny smudge on the horizon. Their journey plunged them into a suffocating, shadow-drenched forest. The long ride left Gale running on fumes. Exhaustion slammed into him, and his head slumped forward, heavy as stone. He sagged against her, earning a sharp, exasperated complaint. They sat side by side, awkwardness crackling between them. He snapped, "There's not an inch of room to move." The wagon groaned, bulging with goods and mercenaries. Gale's pulse hammered as she asked herself, had she really walked out of the party? He urged them to give each other space and steer clear of one another. He sneered, sure Cash had hired her just for her looks. They'd been aching to be rid of him for a while. Finally he shattered the silence and pressed, "Why did you decide to quit?" Mara pinned him with a weary, disbelieving stare. A jolt hit her. She had to hurl the same question straight back at him. A heavy sigh spilled from her as she steeled herself to explain. She finally owned up and laid the whole truth bare. Gale froze, jaw dropping, as a lone ogre felled Cash. She erupted, roaring that the entire party was useless. She glared around, furious she'd ever stepped foot into this dumpster fire of a party. Gale froze, incredulous that she was actually talking about cold, hard cash. He tore through the silence and revealed why he was forced to flee the capital. She could still feel the sting of them pinning everything on him. A cold slap of shame hit her. She realized she'd been painfully insensitive. They choke out apologies, each owning the pain they put the other through. She gave a single, silent nod, accepting his apology and letting the hush between them say everything. They rode as silence slid in, softening into something comfortable. Gale's eyes shot open. She had almost no luggage. A decision hit him. He grabbed some food and held it out to her. He whipped a fresh, steaming baguette out of his pack. He sliced the loaf cleanly down the middle with a practiced flick of his wrist. She dove straight into preparing the sandwich fillings, hands moving with fierce, focused purpose. He piled meat and vegetables onto the bread, stacking layer upon layer into a towering, mouth-watering masterpiece. At last, he flicked a final, decisive pinch of seasoning over the dish. He pressed it into their hands, an emblem declaring the birth of their new club. She scoffed, snarling that he was anything but a victim. The sandwich begged to be devoured, every layer screaming mouth-watering perfection. Mora's heart lurches as his simple, quiet kindness hits her full force. He snaps at her, "Don't overthink it." He doles out his food to everyone else. She clamps down and takes a huge, satisfying bite. She bursts out, "This sandwich is delicious." Her jaw dropped as he tore through the work with lightning speed. She flashes a mischievous grin and teases, "So, what are your intentions?" Her jaw snaps open at the wine's sky-high price. She leaned in, hungry for every detail of how his market stall had exploded into a roaring success. She drops a bomb, mentions a rumored artifact-class item. The princess hunted the cellar, eyes blazing. Dread exploded in his chest as he grasped the horrifying truth. He relives her words about the palace, each one burning into his mind. The memory slams into him, and panic rips through his chest. Desperation fuels his denial as he screams that it can't be true. She locks eyes with him and fires the question, "Could you be the one?" She snaps he doesn't. They nod, only a sage could pull it off. He strikes a mock mystic pose, theatrically pantomiming a wise sage with a cheeky wink. Their laughter ricochets down the forest path, bouncing off the trees like wild music. They shot up a size, laughter crashing over them and leaving them totally refreshed. They slam palms together, a fresh bond igniting between them. Filament refused to be a balanced pair. The wagon jolts violently, hurling them aside. Darkness swallowed everything, and chaos and confusion exploded outward. He bellowed a warning, "They're orcs." Orcs surged forward, tightening the circle around them. He couldn't help but gush about how unbelievably soft they were. She snaps at him, "Now's not the time." A relentless onslaught rips into the wagon train. Outside, chaos exploded across the streets. A guard's scream rips through the air as a brutal blow sends him crashing to the ground. A passenger clutches at them, pleading for help. The other passengers drown in a tide of despair. An oar's eyes snap to their wagon. A horde of orcs stomps toward them, each thundering footfall shaking the earth. Whispers exploded, claiming they'd been seen. No one else can fight. This showdown is reserved for him and Mora. A mother's shields her crying child. A fierce, determined glint ignites in Mora's eye. She glares, voice slicing the air. "Do you have a weapon?" She snapped, "There's no other choice." He clutches a cache of crippling vials and a razor dagger. She snaps, "It will have to do. If you slam your fist and demand a front line." Mora slips in like a shadow and snatches her resolve in deadly silence. "I won't die without trying." She wields her support magic with unshakable confidence. Gale's breath caught as the other's unyielding determination slammed into her heart. "You will seize the front line." He leaps to her side, refusing to let her fight alone. They'll unleash their true power on them. They explode from the shadows and crash into the orcs. Hungry for upgrades, they show up as enchanted runestones. She snaps her arm forward and launches a crackling spell. A blinding barrier of light snaps into existence. A shimmering shield blazes to life, encasing the wagon in a radiant barrier that keeps it safe. It'll shrug off a few strikes. She snaps, "Go on ahead." Gale's hand shot to his hip and ripped the dagger free from its sheath. Mora leveled her staff and began the incantation. An otherworldly power coils through her bones, and she quakes. His dagger erupts, spitting a crackling black aura into the air. She could only stammer, disbelief strangling her voice. Curiosity gnaws at her. What is that power? Dark energy coils around him, twisting like a hungry storm. Black mist coiled from the blade, snaking into the air. My party axed me for being a curse officer. He plants his feet beneath a suffocating dome of darkness. Extra explanations and buffs won't arrive instantly. They'll need time to charge. You must grind their advance to a crawl with his tools. They scramble, clawing for every second to buy time for help. They've got one shot, one explosive, do-or-die moment to pull this off. She snapped, demanding to know what made his daggers pulse with such a menacing aura. He swears it's nothing but a plain, ordinary dagger. He snaps, "Watch my back." She steels herself, energy coiling around her like a living storm, on the brink of unleashing her ultimate spell. The spell flares and dies in a heartbeat. Its power will roar, colossal and unstoppable. She unleashes her spell, Omni Boost. He surges forward, bellowing a thunderous battle cry. He slings two cursed relics racing straight ahead. His aim locks in like a sniper S, the distance dead on. A grin splits his face as he bellows, "Bullseye." The items slammed down dead center, hitting exactly where he'd aimed. The CURS scroll bursts to life. He hurtles toward the stunned orcs. The orcs freeze in place, absolute terror nailing them to the spot. The canyon twists into a nightmarish hellscape. Gasps exploded anew as everyone reeled from that raw, brutal power. A thunderous crash of dark energy shatters the air. Terror pinned the orcs to the spot. She trembles as the curse's power surges through her. Now his debuffs erupt into their full, devastating power. She trembles, terrified the curse could sink its teeth into her. He barrels into the terrified mob, ripping through their panic. He rockets into the fray, every muscle coiled, hell-bent on taking them all down. She screams that her buff still hasn't activated. He rockets forward, dagger primed and aimed to strike. He swoops down and slams into the helpless orc. Gale's eyes snapped wide as the battlefield boiled around him. Mara's voice rips through the air, a frantic warning hurled straight at Gale. She watches, frozen, bewilderment strangling every word. Gale launches herself, blade singing, cleaving an orc's neck. The beast rips out one last, gut-wrenching cry of agony. He slams down onto the skull-strewn ground. A thunderous roar rips from him as he rockets into the horde. Panic seized the orcs, pinning them motionless as fear-choked sobs racked their bodies and tears carved tracks down their cheeks. His cursed talisman lashes out and embeds itself in someone else. He cleaves another monster in half with one fluid, knife-sharp slash. He spins, laughter bursting free, triumph and battle glee blazing in his voice. He kept showering praise and slinging buffs, but she flat-out refused to lift a finger. She feels a savage curse flood the air. It rips terror into their hearts, pins them in frozen paralysis, and shreds their defenses. Then everything snapped into focus, his weapon. The dagger thrummed with a malevolent, bone-deep darkness. It pulsed with passive buffs that bypassed defenses and steamrolled through any interference. Recognition slammed into her. This was a legendary-class magic dagger. Out of nowhere, a golden blaze erupts and swallows Gale whole, bathing his body in blinding light. Moore's spell finally erupts, flooding him with power and blasting every stat through the roof. He gapes, awestruck by the top-rank mage's raw power. He rockets off, feeling untouchable, while everyone else watches, skeptical. Mora's breath rips out as the truth of her mistake crashes over her. She gasps. The buff sputters and dies, snapping him back to his normal self. Her focus shattered, and the mana torrent bled dry. He threw back his head and roared, bragging that their combined might made them unstoppable. He lunges again, a streak of crackling dark energy. A feral grin rips across his face as he squares up for the next wave of foes. A fresh horde of orcs surges up before him, snarling and brandishing crude weapons. The lead orc unleashed a furious, earth-rattling roar. He reels, pulse pounding, desperate to know where these new enemies came from. He unleashes a storm of cursed relics. Tiny skulls slam into the orcs' bodies and burst into jagged shards. A crimson cursed energy claws its way in and seizes hold. The curse devours the entire group. They froze solid, their bodies locked motionless like living statues. Paralyzed, they couldn't so much as twitch, every muscle frozen under an invisible weight. Awe floods him as he stares at his slow, simple curse work. He points to Morris Buff as the mastermind behind that gut punch of an effect. Mora snaps, "You're utterly mistaken." Her eyes snap wide as she locks onto his next move. He crouches low, coiling like a spring to crush the last one. He storms forward and squares off against the final, towering orc warlord. Dark, crackling energy roils around his dagger as a shadowy claw erupts from the blade's tip. The ghostly claw rips into the hulking colossus. Morrow zeroes in as dark energy coils and writhes around them. A tidal surge of black energy explodes forward, swallowing the final monster. The York disintegrates into mist, leaving only skulls. Mora staggers, disbelief blazing. He actually unleashed insta kill. A 1 in a million power that defies every forge and ritual. No craft can ever summon it. Gale shrugs off his own feat like they're nothing. He watches, calm resolve hardening his features. Mora stares down at her unlikely battle partner, disbelief sparking behind her gaze. A triumphant grin splits his face as he roars, "Victory is ours." Mora forces out a gravelly "yes," clearly running on empty. He sweeps her up and spins her into a wild, triumphant victory dance. The other passengers shoved forward, peering out from the wagon. They tower shoulder to shoulder over the smoking wreckage they unleashed. Grateful passengers burst out, swarming them with heartfelt thanks. That night, the sky exploded into a shower of blazing stars. Gale swallowed his pride and admitted that when the fight went toe-to-toe, terror gripped him. Shock rips through Morrow, a rare crack in the armor of the man famed for brutal efficiency. She pinned him down and demanded to know how long he'd had the cash. He smirks and proclaims, "I'm just a curse of Osir." Mora's eyes pinned him in place, her face a closed vault that betrayed nothing. She snarls Cash was an idiot to let him go. She restates it, crowning him talented at everything. He swears he's innocent, but she already knows he's lying. She shoots him a grateful "thanks for the coffee," then bolts upstairs and crashes into bed. Gale plants himself alone by the fire, watching the others with a quiet, dangerous intensity. The other travelers erupted in laughter, swapping stories that crackled through the air. He replays Mora's kind words like a lifeline, each syllable seeping courage into his bones. A tiny, honest smile sparks at the corners of his lips. Doubt gnaws at him. Could he actually be talented? He confesses he's never pictured himself that way. He knows he'd never secure one without her. Even so, something inside him snapped awake. He remembers always standing on the sidelines, watching life roar past while he stayed frozen. This time he dove headfirst into the fight. He never once stood among them as they celebrated. He found fighting the monster ignited a savage rush in his veins. A tiny, gleeful chuckle bubbles from his lips. He tilts his face to the stars, a gnawing thought tearing at him. Mora is too nice. Morris is out cold, his head cradled on his bag like a makeshift pillow. The wagon thundered along the dusty road. The driver bellows that we're only moments from our destination. A savage gale jabbed at him and yanked him from sleep. He groans, clawing his way slowly out of slumber. He snaps, "Are we here?" She answers cool and certain, "Yes." They vault from the wagon onto solid ground. They lean in, eyes devouring the news sight. A grin erupts on both their faces, spreading like wildfire. Shoulder to shoulder, they march toward the city gates. They bolt toward their destination, the town of Farm Edge, boots pounding the earth as its rooftops slice the horizon. The title page bursts open, slamming the series' name into the spotlight. The wagon inched onward, shuddering with every reluctant wheel. The driver shouts, "There, our destination's in sight." Morin elbows Gale sharply and hisses, "Wake up." He fights the fog of sleep and cracks his eyes open, still half trapped in a dream. Moro's eyes snap wide, heart leaping. Are they already here? Their boots crash down onto the wooden floorboards. Gale's jaw drops, his breath snatched away by the sight before him. Their surprise explodes into wide, radiant grins. They exploded into a sprint, exhilaration crackling through their veins. At long last, they reached Farm Edge. The city clings to terraced cliffs, cascading down the rock in dizzying layers. Across the endless sunlit pastures, cows graze in blissful calm, their steady chewing the slow heartbeat beneath the wide-open sky. Below, farmers kneel in the furrows, hands flying as they coax fresh life from the soil. Awe slammed into him as he drank in the sprawling, rolling sea of farmland. She whirls and snaps at Gale, "What's your plan?" He'll hawk the ogre's materials to score cold, hard coin. Mora's eyes spark as she beckons, "Let's head to the guild together." They burst into the Farm Edge Adventurers Guild. Mora freezes, the quest he chose hits him like a thunderbolt. She scoffs, openly doubting he's actually that serious about it. He turns to Mora and implores her to join him on the quest. This A-rank mission is a brutal gauntlet that will shove us straight to our breaking point. Mora falters, dread coiling tight in her chest. Dread clenches her, two support roles can't shoulder this. Gale stands rock solid, every move soaked in fierce confidence in his specialty. From below, a cheerful voice rings up, greeting them. She explodes into view, and they reel back, stunned. Mora's breath hitched. How had she slipped in so quietly? Gale confesses, jaw tight, that he never even noticed her. The elf receptionist's gaze locked onto them, tracking every twitch and step. She locks her gaze into the gale, roaring overhead. Gale declares, "We're from the capital." Delight exploded in her chest when she spotted the new adventurers. She clasps her hands together, gratitude pouring out of her. The town reeled under relentless hardship. Gale grins, utterly charmed by her earnestness. Mora slams him with a glare seething with pure disgust. Morup snaps a pointed throat clear. Mora flashes a sly grin and declares she's nothing but a traveler. She boldly proclaims, "I'm a support mage." Joy explodes from the receptionist the moment they hear it. A triumphant grin spreads across her face. She's got a rear guard watching her back. She glares at Gale and snaps, "Are you a thief?" He's a curse artificer support, weaving curses that bolster his allies. She repeats the unfamiliar job title, testing each syllable like it's a secret code. Gale admits it, this reaction is perfectly normal. Gimli blurts a rapid apology, mortified at her own reaction. Artificers hardly ever show their faces here, spotting one is like catching lightning. His one-of-a-kind class grabbed her attention, curiosity burning in her chest. Mora glares, annoyance crackling in her eyes. He's itching to learn the lay of the land. She steals her gaze and declares the underground cemetery quest underway. They hung on her every word as she broke the whole thing down, detail by razor-sharp detail. The catacombs have slumbered, untouched for ages. Liches keep unleashing relentless chaos. She locks him with a razor stare and snaps, "Can you do it?" Doubt clenches her jaw. She doesn't believe he can handle the task. Her dismissive tone swatted aside even more objects. Gale flashes a grin, utterly unfazed. Gimli spat a bitter mutter as she warned him, her words landing like blows. They're never sending a rescue team. He shot a quick question at her, do you have any maps? He's laser-focused on one prize, snatching the map. She races his quest application through the registration system. Amusement dances in her eyes as she watches the adventurer. She grips his arm, sincerity blazing in her eyes, and implores him to be careful. She stumbles and her foot collides with his, totally by accident. She smirks and taunts them for crowding so close. He snatches back one final, vital memory. She rips the truth into the open. She's the guild master. She answers to Gimli. Gale's cheeks flare crimson, words choking off as the revelation slams into him. His mind snaps to the materials he brought. He asked to trade them straight for cold, hard cash. Mora scoffs, calling him shockingly naive. His directness slams into her. Her cheeks burn and she fumbles for words, utterly flustered. He snapped, what do you mean by that? Gale blurts, am I coming along? He watches her fall silent, offering no denial. She declares he's the kind of guy who always needs saving. Gale's jaw dropped, words dying on his tongue. Mora's cheeks flared scarlet as she averted her gaze from him. He swallows hard and admits her presence steadies him. Shamelessness sets her cheeks ablaze and shatters her composure. She plunges her face into her hands. Adrenaline spikes through him and a fierce grin splits his face. He's itching to charge into the quest. To him, the undead are nothing but raw materials, cold, expendable tools for his grand designs. He towered in size and clung to a strange hobby. Night crashed over Farm Edge, swallowing the city in a river of shadow. Gimli perches alone on the rooftop, a lone dwarf carved against the sky. Her thoughts snap to the Kur's artificer. Her thoughts snap back to that one man, again and again. He obliterates the idea of an ordinary artificer. The next morning, the inn jolted awake. They're tearing into a huge, hearty breakfast. Mora snaps, you overslept. He swore he'd felt the same about her. He feels 100 townspeople's eyes lock onto him. Adventurers are a rare sight in this city. Only a handful dare roam its streets. They had to stick out to the locals, like a flare blazing in the night. A man steps forward, voice steady, and reassures them, don't worry. They freeze before a towering building, whose shadow swallows the street. He's hellbent on finishing the quest fast. His gaze locks on Mora as she strides ahead. Mora's bag bristles with anti-undead supplies, packed and primed for a brutal midnight hunt. Gale scoffs and hurls the word worrywart at her over her preparations. He crowed with a cocky grin that the undead were his specialty. He smirks and jokes she'll run away with him. Grinning like a dare, he led them straight toward the yawning, shadow-swallowed entrance. He's dead certain he knows exactly where to go. They crash into a colossal, sunken amphitheater, a haunting arena swallowed by a graveyard. The catacombs yawned into an endless, jaw-dropping vastness that stole my breath. Birds wheel like dark sentinels, high above the open-air tomb. Ancient graves yawn across the earth, skulls strewn like mute trophies. Gale grins and calls the morbid scene beautiful. Mora recoils, horror and disgust written across her face. A desecrated skeleton sprawls across the stone floor, a grim, silent witness. Mora reels, horror exploding in her chest at the sight of the desecration. Gale leans in, fingers tracing the bones like it's nothing. She jerks back, stunned. He jabbed a finger at the ground, spotlighting the crisp, unmistakable footprints stamped into the dirt. Mora's breath hitched as the shadows painted iron bars and rusted chains. Had this place really been a dungeon? She fiercely demands that every individual's dignity be honored. She bows her head and murmurs a hushed, reverent prayer for the fallen. He can't help but notice her devoutness. It's nothing like his. His eyes snap to a dormant, undead skull lying on the ground. He snatches the skull into his hands and thrusts it toward her. The skull in his hand snaps to life and starts chattering like it's possessed. Morris unleashes a blood-curdling scream and shatters the skull into bone shards. He tore into her earlier speech about dignity. She snapped and declared, I'm done. He forces a brave grin and tries to convince her the weak monsters pose no threat. He froze for a heartbeat, then ripped the truth from his lips and laid his true intention bare. He's itching to plunge deeper and snatch higher-grade materials. He thrusts a lantern into her hands and says goodbye, his voice cracking with everything he won't say. He slid down, grinning as visions of wonderful materials danced through his head. Mora's left behind, seething rage boiling over his selfishness. She edges into the shadows and peers down the pitch-black corridor after him. Dread coiling in her gut, she steels herself and plunges after him into the black. Tension coils in her chest as she darts her eyes around while she descends. She jolts as a sudden, ominous presence closes in right beside her. She screams, "Wait for me." They're swallowed by a suffocating sea of coffins, countless, silent, and closing in. She mutters, desperation burning through her words, "I need to get out now." She lunges for her bag, but he's already hauling it away. An unseen presence whips past her. She yelps and hurls herself onto a roaring gale, terror ripping through her. She swore something had brushed her, voice trembling. He folded his arms, clearly not buying it. She latched onto him, voice shaking, and insisted it wasn't her imagination. Fear seized her and tears brimmed in her eyes. Gale's cheeks flare crimson from the awkward close contact. He fights to calm her, his voice a steady anchor as she clings. She clings to his shoulder like it's her last anchor, her whole body trembling. The sudden touch slams a jolt straight through Gale. He points and rips away the veil of her terror, exposing a harmless source. A tiny bat shot past them. She claws at her pride, insisting she knew it all along. A real skeleton snaps upright right behind her. She lunged in and hurled a scream into his ear, the blast shattering his hearing. He clamps his hands over his ears as more skeletons burst into view. He implores her, voice raw with desperation, to calm down and stop yelling. Panic rips through her as she screams, "No way." The skeleton skittered closer and she jerked back. Mora snapped, the last threads of control ripping away as fury boiled over. Panic exploded inside her. She hurled Gale away with a desperate shove. She roars at the skeleton, demanding it stay back. She lashes out with wild fury, smashing the lantern into splinters against the ground. She brandishes the blazing lantern like a weapon. She drives it down into the skeletons with bone-crushing force. The oil ignited, and the undead erupted into living bonfires. Flames lick at Gale's skin, and he freezes, desperate to know why he's burning. His hair erupted into flames, and shock slammed into him. He slaps at the flames, crowning his head, snuffing them out in a single frantic motion. He hurls himself to the ground and rolls fiercely, smothering the flames eating at him. Her blaze of chaos has finally been snuffed out. He leans in, voice tight and urgent, "Are you even a little calmer now?" He snapped, "Why did you keep following me when fear was shaking you?" She falters, hesitation thick in her throat, then answers his sincere question. She confesses, fear gnawed at her knowing he was alone. Gale's guard crumbled, her deep concern struck him, and his face betrayed how moved he was. He snaps, "Don't worry about me." He beams, voice trembling with gratitude, and whispers, "Thank you for caring so much." He implored her to follow him deeper inside. He urges her to shut her eyes the moment fear strikes. He thrusts his hand out, a lifeline for her to grasp. Mora's cheeks flare crimson. She bites her lip and, voice trembling, accepts his offer. Gale flushes too, a hot wave of embarrassment crashing over him. They forge ahead through the dark, hands locked tight. He shatters the moment, scoffing, "It's a joke." The scene slams back into the capital city. The wolf pack surges toward the blacksmith shop. The blacksmith pounded his anvil, every strike driving him deeper into his work. Desperation clawed at the party as they hawked their battered gear for whatever coins they could scrape up. The blacksmith sneers and refuses, barking that their tools are far too filthy to use. They cram into an alley, cold and flinching at every sound. Luke snatched up a handful of low-ranked quest flyers. Cash sneered, tossing Luke's pathetic findings aside like worthless scraps. Cash sneered, declaring low-ranked quests beneath them. He snaps at everyone to calm down and face reality. He slams it home to them, everyone's flat out exhausted. Luke grits his teeth and admits the grueling quest can't be pulled off right now. Melissa demanded they regain their strength first. Cash clenched his jaw, forced a tight nod, and gave in to their cautious plan. He seethes, railing against cheap extermination requests. You spot an A-rank quest, exterminate ogres. The ogre's memory stalks them, freezing every soul with bone-deep terror. The party shrugs and flings the A-ranked quest flyer aside like it's nothing. Everything narrows to a single desperate choice, C-rank. They debate tackling a C-rank orc extermination. Cash scoffed at the C-rank threat, brushing it off with a cocky grin, massive miscalculation. Regret gnawed at Luke. He'd crashed out under the stars with an empty stomach. Norris roars a fierce rally, trying to pull the dejected Luke back. The rearguard narrows their eyes at the vanguard, doubt sparking behind every look. Luke and Norris erupt in a sharp, cynical laugh. Norris hoards his safety like gold, his survival trumps everything. They come upon an abandoned church. Luke scans from atop the church wall, eyes razor-sharp for any flicker of movement below. He stares across the desolate graveyard, tombstones half swallowed by a savage tangle of overgrowth. Luke radios in, voice sharp. Enemies are everywhere, there are many of them. Roughly 20 skeletons skulk in the shadows. Cash scoffs, treating the number like dust under his boot. Melissa smirks and nods, certain the fight will be a cakewalk. The vanguard braces like coiled steel, poised to thunder into the fray. Cash whips his sword aloft, flashing steel as he bellows the plan. He erupts in blinding sacred light and launches a crushing attack. The skeletons stood unscathed, exploding into raucous, maniacal cackles. Melissa burst forward, twin blades singing and primed to strike. Melissa calls in from Norris' magical support, her voice blazing. Norris launches into a blazing chant, summoning a crackling fire spell. Luke rockets off the wall, hurtling downward. He rockets forward and pulverizes the skeleton with a single, thunderous blow from his fist. They picture snatching victory in a heartbeat, the battle already theirs. Cash smugly smirks and lays out their flawless strategy, every move mapped with ruthless precision. The rearguard steps up, vowing to hold the line and back their allies. Cash and Melissa plant themselves before the gate. The clerical ward crowning the gate shoots upward, its sacred seal snapping away to reveal the passage. A long-dormant skeleton jolts awake, bones rattling as it drags itself to life. The undead army roars to life, shaking off its long slumber. The two warriors hurled themselves into the heart of the fray. Cash unleashes a thunderous roar, daring the skeletons to come at him. Melissa scoffs, savaging them for the sheer foolishness of picking a fight in blinding daylight. They laugh cocky, already picturing the reward slipping into their hands. A fist slams square into Cash's face. A bony fist slams into Melissa, too. The skeletons catapult them into the air like ragdolls. The rear guard watches the plan implode, every hope collapsing before their eyes. They're encircled, spent after days, and sprawled on the ground. Skeletons towered over them, cackling with cold, cruel mockery. Skeletons swarm in, battering them with ruthless, bone-shaking blows. Melissa tucks into a tight ball, clamping her arms over her head to shield it. Cash is pinned to the floor as skeletons pummel him with bone-crushing blows. Luke goads Norris, demanding he unleash a spell. Norris channels a roaring surge of arcane energy, fingers sparking as he braces to unleash his magic. He funnels every ounce of his will into the spell. He launches Inferno Blast, a tiny, blazing ember. Norris and Luke froze, eyes riveted to the result. The pathetic fireball limps toward the enemy, sputtering like a dying candle. It sputters into nothing on the skull, leaving it completely unscathed. The skeleton bristled and hurled a sharp, mocking cackle straight at them. They reel back, terror roaring as skeletons close in. The C-rank quest slammed into absolute, crushing failure. Everything snaps into a brutal, force-driven setting. At first light the next day they tore into the wilds, hunting orcs. Melissa storms forward, offering herself for the attack with unshakable confidence. She catapults onto the orc and drives her blade into its gut. The party explodes in cheers, convinced she's just clinched victory. Melissa's gaze dropped, bewilderment flaring across her face. Her sword bites into its back, buried so deep it won't budge. Her party erupts into frantic shouts, barking at her to hurry. York's hulking hand clamps down on the wrist. It whisks her off its back like she's weightless. Bjork snatches a fistful of her clothes and hoists her so she dangles by the fabric. She screams, desperation clawing at her throat, begging for Cash to help. The York stares like a strange, unblinking eye. It snaps around, turns its back, and strides off, utterly ignoring everyone else. It drops Melissa like a rag doll and oinks, unnervingly calm. The party erupts in savage laughter, circling Melissa and ripping her apart the moment her rejection lands. Melissa screams as Cash pummels its back. Cash locks onto what looks like an opening and lunges to strike. His blade ricocheted off its hindquarters, leaving it completely unscathed. Cash froze as disbelief slammed into him, his mind scrambling for answers. Just a hairline scratch screams the exact spot where the blow landed. The orc's face snaps into a furious snarl. Cash forces out a feeble apology. The deer on the quest stumbled, crumpled, and became yet another humiliating failure. Several days later, the Capital Guild crackled with restless energy. The party slumps, battered and hollow-eyed, every face a portrait of crushing defeat. They pin every one of their relentless failures on Gale. They swore to grind for every coin, then storm straight at Gale and force a showdown. They pounce on an even easier goblin quest. Cash and Melissa stagger into view, battered and bruised. Norris and Luke, too, lie battered and badly wounded. The guild receptionist sneered, ripping them apart with biting laughter over their latest failure. Cash hisses under his breath, dead certain this was a con. A sudden flashback hurls us straight to the moment they arrived at a village. They swagger up to the village elder, chests puffed, shouting proud assurances. Cash's voice cracks as he confesses this is his first goblin fight. Goblins astride hulking beasts surge forward, crashing into them and driving them down. Goblins swarmed in and savagely pummeled them into the dirt. The villagers seized makeshift arms and fought tooth and nail for their own survival. A villager charges into the fray on horseback, spearheading the defense. The battlefield erupted into chaos, steel clashed, cries shredded the air, and every heartbeat throbbed with brutal intensity. The village digs in and refuses to foot the bill for its failure. She dares them to strip their ranks and step down on their own. Rage boiled in Cash as he slammed his fist down and demanded an easier quest. She draws her hand back, poised to unleash a stinging slap on his insolent face. A stinging slap rockets the Cash into a dizzying spin. His comrades pressed in, eyes locked on his motionless form. The ocean tears open, exposing a sprawling, sunken necropolis. Two skeletons clack and banter amid the crumbling ruins. Gale stared, eyes riveted on the morbid scene. He spots a spark of promise flickering among the tombstones. Mora trails him down the stairs, heart hammering and breath caught with every creak. A presence prickles her spine, he's blissfully unaware. In an instant she lunges, clamps onto him, fingers digging into his shirt like a lifeline. He implored her not to cling. He feels something coalesce right beside him. A titanic skeletal hand bursts free, its bony fingers clamping shut around a ragged heap of bones. Bones grind and rattle as a towering bone colossus drags itself upright, looming over the battlefield like a walking grave. It dwarfed the two adventurers, a colossal shadow blotting out the sky. Mora's lids are squeezed shut as she implores, desperate to open them. He bellows a warning, it might be even scarier now. He exhales, voice cold as steel, and launches a 3-second countdown. A labyrinthine dispel seal snaps into existence right before him. The massive goal shuddered, then began to dissolve. Mora bit down as raw power surged through her. Her eyes snapped wide as astonishment ripped through her. They stare down the golem's smoking, shattered husk. He leans in, voice raw, "Can you open your eyes?" She snapped, "Did you cast a spell?" Her jaw dropped, she'd never even encountered that before. He rips the veil back and lays out the priest's sacred duties, guiding us through every ritual and responsibility. He points out it's far from ideal. He pauses, hunting for the perfect words to explain. He doesn't cast them out, he leans in and devours every word. He hands him the mic, a chance to be heard. Bones of a skeleton littered the ground, strewn like the shattered pieces of a marionette. He cradles the crumbling skull, fingertips gentle as a prayer. Mora reels, bafflement clawing at her mind. She snapped, "What is he talking about?" He snarled, "What force pulls the strings of the undead?" She fires back the correct answer, magic or grudges. He grins and fires off a bright, confirming, "Yeah." He leans in and insists that of all places, here it's truer than anywhere. He snarls that the undead recoil from purification. Priests hurl baseless rebukes, and they seethe. He says it slams into him, like the harsh scoldings he endured as a child. His words slam into Mora, yanking a buried memory up to the surface. She still remembers them, tossing her aside just because she was a woman. A fist snaps shut as a surge of old rage tears through. He barked at her, "Don't you dare meddle." Gale locks onto the distress etched on her face and rushes in, asking, "Are you okay?" He drops into a crouch, concern blazing in his eyes as he studies her. She shrugs it off in a heartbeat, acting like it never even happened. He lays bare the spirit's simple regrets. Grudges flare like sparks and die out in a heartbeat, nothing more than passing, everyday blips. A flash of comprehension strikes Mora. He begins to grasp his point. He gives a sharp, decisive nod at the sarcophagus, demonstrating exactly what he means. The lid explodes off, slamming open with brutal force. A uniformed skeleton clatters into view. Morris screams into a savage gale, then crumples and dies. A chill spikes her spine. She instantly recognizes the monster's type. Danger stalked the night, skeletal and pitch black. She snaps, this isn't for rear guards. He chokes out to her, I can't breathe. He claws at her, desperate to wrench her free. He fights free and shoves her off him. The night loomed toward them, each deliberate step dragging the air taut. It hoists its blade skyward, chattering in a frantic, metallic staccato. Morris's scream ripped through the air, demanding it stop. Gale Kumlai thrusts a single finger skyward. He slams the dispel seal onto the night. The magical seal erupted into life without a moment's warning. Night crumples like paper and tumbles into a dark heap. Morris stares froze, disbelief carved across her face. A shimmering, ethereal spirit surges upward. The ghost of a young soldier materializes, a trembling echo of a life cut short. The spirit frantically scans the surroundings, bewilderment etched into every hollow glance. More lunges and snatches Gale, bewilderment ripping through him. The spirit dissolves, scattering into a glittering swarm of luminous motes. Both of them watch it blink out of existence. Mora reels, her mind scrambling to make sense of what just happened. He snaps a decisive nod, proclaiming he understands the situation. Her jaw drops, disbelief igniting, he knew its story. Night couldn't say farewell, it clung to the city like a stubborn shadow. Regret clung to him like a shadow, never letting go. She snapped, how could you know? He smirks and admits it was a hunch. His craft unlocked an uncanny, razor-sharp perception. The undead ache for empathy. His method turns every craft into perfection. The priest's magic devours the materials, dissolving them into dust. They pressed on through the catacombs. Mora stares him down, her eyes blazing with raw intensity. He leaned in, concern sharp in his voice, and asked, what's wrong? She snaps at him, you think this is easy. He locks eyes and declares he does. His casual smirk sets her blood boiling. She lunges, seizes him, and snarls, apologize. He boasts his plan, leaves everyone walking away a winner. She's convinced his mindset is a ticking time bomb. They bolted up another long, pitch-black staircase, the shadows swallowing each step. They stride shoulder to shoulder through the suffocating gloom. Gale burst out, we're here. They burst into a massive, pillared hall, towering columns looming like stone titans. At the very bottom, a shocking blaze of light ripped through the darkness. The catacombs seethed with skeleton knights. Shambling ghouls, now shooters, surge into their ranks. Dark phantoms and Death Eaters prowled the shadows, waiting to strike. Mora's breath caught at the dazzling light pouring from so many spirits. She insisted she was fine, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Gale froze for a beat, hunting for the perfect words before she let them fly. The vast hall bristled with an army of undead. Relief surged through him the moment he realized there were no liches. Mora practically bounced on the spot, urging them to turn back. A titanic shadow barreled across their exit and slammed it shut. The entire undead army snapped around in perfect, chilling unison. As their faces crumpled, their fate was sealed. She cracked the door and peered out, bewildered as the silence swallowed the room. The monsters hang back, refusing to attack them. Their eyes met, and a fierce, wordless understanding ignited between them. Mora yanked Gale into hiding. A hooded figure in ink-black robes tore out of the passage, darkness clinging to him. A crown sat atop a skull-like head, its exposed bones bristling with menace. The towering arch-sorcerer strode into the hall, his shadow swallowing the light. Once more, the graveyard's master stepped out of the shadows. It loomed before us, the pyro-fiend arch-sorcerer itself. Its mere presence could ignite disaster. A new voice sliced through the air, shouting, just in time. The girl with glasses blurted, I'm looking for them. She gasped, is that a disaster-class monster? The arch-sorcerer offered what looked like a slow, deliberate nod, a silent yes. She shot the question like a flare, did you go to church? The floor under his feet blew apart in a deafening blast. Thick smoke poured from the freshly formed pit, clawing at the sky. The mysterious girl snapped, I didn't go either. Clutching them tight, she launched herself into the yawning hole. They crashed into a tangled heap at the chamber's base. Panic clawed at their throats as the threat loomed overhead. She made a desperate dash, yanking Gale along behind her. A suffocating, pitch-black miasma unfurls, devouring the air. A storm of dark energy whipped around the enthralled undead. The army snapped to life, every soldier's eyes burning with a fresh, fierce purpose. Mora begged to break free, desperate to flee. Gale stood stone-cold, utterly unshaken. A guttural grunt ripped from him as he heaved a colossal stone slab aloft. He slammed it down like a judge's gavel, the crash sealing the escape tunnel behind them. Above, the skeleton disintegrated, its bones vaporizing into a swirling, ghostly mist. Another one surged forward, its form dissolving into nothing. A third dissolved, devoured by nothingness. The undead horde began to crumble, bones snapping and armor collapsing into dust. A colossal divine dispel seal blazed across the ceiling, devouring every inch. Mora's eyes snapped. She instantly recognized the high-level priest technique. The intricate magical runes flared to life, glowing with fierce power. Her jaw dropped the moment she realized he could create such things. The mass of miasma burst apart and evaporated in an instant. Gale and Mora hunker in the shadows, eyes locked as they peer from their hiding place. The spell tore the veil and laid bare the ghostly, flickering silhouettes of human souls. One by one, they disintegrated into shimmering motes of light. Contentment suffused the chamber, wrapping it in a peaceful hush. Outside, a blast of cause slammed into them like a dark, mocking welcome. Mora vowed she'd never set foot here again. Gale drew a deep breath and felt utterly refreshed. A day trip blew him away. Mora scoffed, calling him out for blowing the feat way out of proportion. Gale's breath caught. Sorcerers like that were a rare breed. More often than not, they stalked the crumbling tombs of nobles. He clutched the bag of new materials to his chest, grinning wildly like he'd just unearthed treasure. Moro studied him, eyes cool and calculating, weighing every twitch and choice. She demanded, "Do you truly like cursed items?" The camera slammed into a tight close-up of one of his necklaces. He paraded his loot like a trophy and crowed that it was the coolest thing around. Mora bristled. She couldn't stand his aesthetic. He confessed that only a handful could truly grasp his style. Mora slammed him with questions about his old stall. Warmth flooded him as the memory of the girl who liked his designs surged back. Mora's face stayed stone cold, the story ricocheting off her like dust. He swore the world would catch up. She laughed and shot down his claim. He swore he'd open a shop and prove it. Moro's memory slammed him back to the guild, the exact moment they scouted him. The receptionist barked the name of the party that needed support. Cash bellowed at the sluggish, crawling Gale. The receptionist snapped, "That's the party." She unleashed a blistering portrait of the wolf pack's brutal, clashing personalities. She read Gale's downtrodden past like an open book. Mora's gaze hardened as the whole situation snapped into focus. She understood it perfectly. She snapped up the job for the paycheck. Words explode like gunfire. Gale echoes them. Mora flinched as the memory of her brutal dismissal surged back. She locked eyes with Gale in the present. She couldn't shake the image of his terrified, cowering eyes. Now his eyes blazed with hope. A gentle, knowing smile curled at her lips. A voice sliced the silence and snapped, "What do you mean by that?" She spun around, a mischievous grin breaking out as she admitted it was a little fun. Every moment with Gale crackled with pure fun. He taunted her for crying. She bristled and denied she'd cried. He apologized, grin refusing to fade as he soaked up her reaction. Mora blurted it out, heart on her sleeve. She was grateful for everything. She slipped into the new town without breaking a sweat. If I'd been alone, the struggle would have skyrocketed. Relief flooded her. She wasn't alone. A shared laugh ignited pure, unstoppable joy. Gale thanked Mora with fierce, heartfelt gratitude for her help. His blunt words struck like lightning. Her cheeks erupted into a fiery blush. She exploded, "Your honesty is embarrassing." She forced a tiny, trembling thank you past her lips. Gale stayed oblivious and snapped dents at him. Mora leaned in, eyes blazing, and asked to split the massive reward. Gale banked on them, cutting it clean down the middle. She declared she was nothing but a burden. She'd only agree to lug his things. Mora gaped, astonished he could shoulder that impossible load. He ripped back his sleeve, exposing a cursed bracelet that flooded him with brutal strength. He roared, declaring it would rewrite the rules of warfare. Put everything else aside, the taste assaults your senses. She leaned in, voice razor-sharp, and demanded, "Have you ever seen real artifacts?" He sneered, dismissing every single one as a tacky design. Magical items usually appeared as plain vessels, quietly cradling fierce power. They doled out meager power boosts, only tiny increases to ability. The moment an item packed multiple effects, it stopped being a trinket and announced itself as a true artifact. He scoffed, roaring at the claim that national treasures were tacky. His own creations unleashed jaw-dropping performance. His sense of style screamed disaster. Obsession burned him. He chased the fusion of countless effects. His boundless creativity turned priceless artifacts into meaningless trinkets. Mora echoed the words, disbelief roaring in his chest. He could craft the perfect item for her in a heartbeat. She knew cursed items thrummed with raw, dangerous power. A massive risk of being cursed loomed over them. They paid a brutal price, and the side effects hit like shrapnel. Imagine a curse officer seizing control of it. Imagine the power lingering, untouched and curse-free. What would that unleash? A shiver raced down their spine. She clutched the reward bag to her chest, squeezing it like a lifeline. He could make the very foundations of the world shudder. He was utterly convinced his designs were flawless. A small, knowing smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Denial shattered in her chest. Gale's era would never come. She affirmed her own judgment. His style strangled any shot at fame. Gale whooped, "We're so close." Mora urged them to find a carriage. He flagged down a passing farmer's cart. Gale, the cursed artificer, strode forward and hurled his name at them like a challenge. She was captivated by him. He was the kind of guy who pulled her in. She could get pulled back into partying with him again. They swept into the guild that night. Gimli flung open the doors and bellowed a hearty welcome as he ushered them into the Adventurers' Guild. She blinked, they were already there. Gale shot back, "It's just the opposite." He thrust his haul toward her and asked her to appraise it. He also unveiled a special item. Recognition slammed into her the moment her eyes landed on the arch-sorcerer's jaw. Gimli tossed down a 10% bonus. Mora snapped back, demanding 30%. The quest hurled them headlong into brutal, life-threatening danger. Her jaw dropped, disbelief and fury sparking. The offer was insultingly low. Mora's glare sliced the room as she openly questioned the guild's integrity. Gimli winced, apologized, and threw out a 20% offer. Quests were won or lost by one thing: ruthless, ironclad preparation. He thought her heart overflowed with kindness. Gimli burst in and shattered their pleasant atmosphere. Regret clawed at her for being painfully inexperienced. Mora endorsed the sentiment. She pinned her hopes on a grave digger, and it turned out to be the wrong call. The moment she apologized, he melted into a puddle. His fingers twitched, hungry to pat her. He crushed the impulse and pinned his hand to his side. She stepped forward, eyes blazing, and vowed to patrol at his side. Gimli lunged into his arms, excitement exploding from him. Recognition slammed into him. She was the Guildmaster. He'd never been drenched in praise like that. Mora snapped at her, "Get away from him." The moment of truth arrived. The appraisal roared to life. Mora stood shoulder to shoulder with Gale, heartbeats loud as they waited for their pay. She fired the question at him, "Do you like little girls?" He blasted back a fierce no, the instant that surprise question landed. She called out the unmistakable fondness dripping from his every move. She steeled herself and decided it was fine anyway. She cut through the silence and demanded, "Why are you sulking now?" She dropped a bombshell. Gimli was nearly 100 years old. The news hit like a thunderclap, knocking the wind out of everyone. Gimli snapped an apology as her hand betrayed her and slipped. At last, the quest reward stood ready. More treasure waited to be claimed later. Her pulse raced as she weighed whether to blurt the woman's age. A voice ripped through the air, screaming, "Gimli-sama." She demanded to know what was wrong. The guild slammed its doors shut for the night. News thundered in from the capital city. They converged in her dimly lit office. News slammed into her. An assassination had just occurred. Princess Carla clawed her way back from the brink, clutching a single special item. It refused to be called one of the church's relics. A mysterious artifact pulsed with irresistible intrigue. It hit like a punch. The assassins were unknown military personnel. Looks like the Empire's elite strike force. Maybe it's tied to the one wish they clutched to their heart. Gimli roared for more thrilling stories. Her subordinate declared, "That's all for now." She demanded a fresh, deeper investigation. The subordinate yielded to the command. She dove into the information alone, tearing through every line with ruthless focus. The Empire had zeroed in on the princess. The capital thrums at the Empire's core, its fate chained to a cursed artifact. The artifact slammed into her memory, conjuring the face of someone she knew. Gale's name burst into his thoughts. She felt his power slam into her like a lightning strike, instant and undeniable. Not even the curses he spat out could touch him. He and a mage joined forces and struck the sorcerer down together. Shock pins her to the spot. He bends curses to his will. A curse artificer the undead can't touch. He shrugs off their curses and claws like they're nothing. Gimli strides out of the steamy shower. Memories of her own cursed dark elf clan slam into her. Her clan has clung to a cherished, aching wish for generations. Her clan crashed to their knees before a throne cloaked in shadow. Once a younger Gimli dropped to his knees among them. They must seize the demon lord's heart, the empire's very core. As guild master, she's been hunting down every scrap of intel. Chaos between nations cracked everything open, a rare opportunity waiting to be seized. She leans in and tames the lamp's flame, coaxing it to flare brighter and chase the shadows away. Then an unexpected gale ripped in, battering everything in its path. His confident, easygoing smile is seared into her memory. What if he forged that cursed artifact? He's an irresistible enigma who pulls everyone into his orbit. The wolf pack descends on the royal capital church. A priest's voice thunders, "You're not cursed." A dead hush slammed into the party, freezing every guest mid-breath. Cash scoffs, refusing to believe they're clean. He charged in to shatter Gale's so-called curse. He slams his fist, voice raw. He confirms the curse's traces were present. That he survived was nothing short of a miracle. The truth slams into them. They finally grasp the meaning of their present state. Behold the raw, original power level that defines them. All he'd ever summoned was this much strength. A trembling hand snaps, shut into a fist of raw denial. He explodes, hurling the blame at the priest's incompetent hands. Don't mistake Lament for a second-rate magician. He snaps an order and sends them sprinting to find Gale. They should tear through the shabby back alleys. Luke snaps he's had enough. He clenched his jaw, squared his shoulders, and stormed out of the party. They pawned every last piece of gear to snatch the dispel. They're running on fumes and penniless, can't even pay for a place to sleep. They belong in the back alleys, hidden, forgotten, and exactly where they should be. Cash yanks Luke by the hood, fury burning in his eyes. Luke fights him tooth and nail, bellowing, "Let go." Luke declares, "Good thing I didn't quit." He thrusts a fistful of cash at the bulletin board. Cash whipped his head around, eyes wide with confusion, and blurted, "Huh." His gaze snaps to the board, devouring everything on it. He barrels past, sending Luke crashing to the ground. He yanks the notice off the wall. He gapes at the paper, disbelief clawing at his chest. The others press in, eyes burning with curiosity, desperate to see what he's found. A chill crawls up Luke's spine. He realizes Cash might have been right. Hope ignites in him. He's convinced the tide of luck has finally swung their way. Fortune finally tips its scales toward them. A wanted poster screams Gale's name. The features list flops, drenched in tacky style. They erupt in thunderous cheers, slamming mugs together to toast Gale, now marked as a wanted man. They spot his stupid face the moment he steps into view. They whisper about a massive bounty posted on his head. They hunger for titles, vast estates, and glittering jewels. This isn't just money, it's the prize that means everything. The informants stand as S-rank adventurers. They'd stood by him, right up until a heartbeat ago. Raucous laughter rips through the palace as the party revels in crass, mocking glee. Luke explodes, ranting that taxpayer money is being squandered. They clamor for more of the mouth-watering cakes. Cash exacts a fee from anyone who dares keep him waiting. Doubt rips through them. Do they truly deserve S-rank? Cash spins around, annoyance snapping into a sharp huh. He spits venom at the insignificant bureaucrats eyeing him, shredding their authority with savage taunts. The princess snaps the name at him, Mr. Cash. He sneered, cut her off, and demanded she call him Cash Sama. Vivian snaps at him, only royalty talks like that. Royalty explodes into the air, hanging there like a gauntlet thrown down. The guard snaps to attention, bows stiffly, and shoots out a crisp, formal apology for the delay. She declares, "I'm Carla de Jerkin." He smirked and crowned her the country's princess. His face snaps rigid as a shock of realization rips through him. She snaps, "Sorry I kept you waiting." The princess sat like a living throne, every breath a decree, radiating absolute royal command. The entire party hurls themselves flat to the ground, faces buried in dirt as panic rips through them. Cash blurts an apology. She brushes it off and orders him to sit. She taps her finger, and everything snaps to life. She lined in and demanded, "Do you know this man?" The party shot nervous, uncertain glances at one another. Smug, confident grins burst across their faces. They erupt into laughter and roar. "Of course we do." Vivian dared them to describe his features. Cash spits out a painfully generic, paint by numbers' description. Vivian scoffs, declaring the description far too common. Melissa sneers that he struts around in a painfully tacky jacket. Recognition slams into the princess, her eye snaps wide. She implores them to keep talking. Norris smirks and calls his style devastatingly tacky. The princess snaps, that's not him. The party froze, jaws dropping in stunned disbelief. They swear it, no one else could have done it. Luke begged her to wait, desperation ripping through his voice. He rips the truth into the open. Gale was once one of their own, a member of the party. He thrusts the dispelled talismans forward, proof clenched in his fists. They lean over, curiosity blazing as their eyes lock onto the talismans. Vivian slammed her palm down and declared, "We found undeniable evidence." He thrust the talismans into their palms as a bonus, grin wide. Carla swears she never got one. Vivian spins to face Luke and spits his name like a challenge, Luke. Vivian unleashes a relentless barrage of questions at Luke about Gale's items. Luke swears he still has more of Gale's items. He flings open the chest, unveiling a vile trove of grotesque, cursed trinkets. Suspicion crackles through the party. Could the items be cursed? Princess Carla's interest ignited in an instant. Her eyes ignited into a glittering blaze of pure, unmistakable delight. Their design hits her like a jolt. She's utterly spellbound and can't look away. She beamed and declared the grotesque items absolute masterpieces. The wolf pack froze, jaws slack, eyes wide, bewilderment crashing over them. The princess erupts into gleeful laughter, joy exploding through her at the discovery. She locks eyes and proclaims their story must be true. Vivian finally relents and thrusts the reward into their hands. Greed ignited a hungry fire in the party's eyes. Vivian scoffs, slams a palm down, and demands to know why the princess has such bizarre taste. Carlos lunges and stops Cash dead in his tracks before he can leave. She thrusts a clinking, weighty sack of coins into his hands. Make no mistake, this isn't advance cash to bankroll a fresh mission. She must pour out her gratitude to him. She pins him with a hard stare and demands, "Do you understand what I mean?" Cash utterly misreads what we're really after. He stakes his life on completing her request. They erupt into thunderous cheers, hoisting the mission pay and toasting their hard-won victory. Cash drops into a low bow and vows finding the Gale will be effortless. Melissa will charge through the merchant quarter and investigate every stall. The others will fan out, ripping through every guild hall and scouring every city gate. They trade nervous glances and whisper the question, what price will Troublegale's demand? They hatch a savage, blood-soaked thank you. They smirk, plotting brutal ways to torture Gale. The princess stands on the palace balcony, eyes blazing as she watches them march out through the gates. Vivian presses the princess, demanding she justify her decision. Carla snaps that she can't trust them. The one at the poster clutches a laughably terrible sketch. They're about to witness the S-rank party's skills firsthand. Eyes stalk the wolf pack. They plant their feet in a soaring palace hallway, chandeliers blazing overhead and tapestries whispering secrets along the walls. Vivian thrusts the poster into the princess's hands. The poster brands Gale as the target. A spectral skull erupts from the ring, its bone-white form radiating a chilling, ghostly light. Curiosity claws at her. She has to know everything about him. Far off the beaten path, a rural town sat like a coiled secret. Farm Edge, the agricultural city, where endless fields stretched to the horizon. Gale unleashed a thunderous sneeze that ripped through the silence. He clenches his jaw, heart racing, our rumors already spreading. He freezes mid-task, brow furrowing as thought tightens its grip. He banishes the thought and forges ahead. He lets out a chuckle, then dives headfirst back into his work. He launches into buffing the lick's ribcage until each bone gleams. Those bones supercharge the dark attribute. He fuses it with dark bone powder. He dumps the liquid into the mixture. This will send its physical attacks into overdrive. Slot a Thunderwisp core and watch your light resistance spike. At last his new masterpiece stands finished. The cursed greatsword, the Divider, seethed with dark intent. Morabur Sin snapped, shouting that he's unbearably loud. She explodes, blasting him for his dark, stinking room. She harbors another motive for being here. Mora stares out as the new day bursts into life. It's his first day selling here. He strides up to the stall, nerves blazing. She volunteers to escort him to his stall. Gale's jaw drops as the offer hits her like a thunderbolt. She stakes out the window, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the street waiting for him. He peddles his cursed wares with a beaming grin and a bouncy, sing-song pitch. Just down the lane, the baker hawks steaming loaves, their warm aroma pulling everyone straight to his stall. Another vendor thrusts out steaming, freshly cooked rice. Mora watches, her gaze scorching the room with raw, searing disapproval. He beams, the shop primed, doors open, ready to kick off business. The market street roared as a river of people surged between stalls, voices and bargains crashing all around. Food stalls are booming, packed with hungry crowds and cash registers ringing. He storms onto farms to hawk his wares, only to be turned away empty-handed. The men tear into the mouth-watering feast, savoring every last bite. He steels himself and launches a daring new sales pitch. He thrusts a pair of chopsticks carved from bone into their hands. They recoiled in disgust and snapped, "No way." He brandishes his sword to hawk it, and the would-be buyer bolts in terror. Mora materializes right behind him and snaps, "What are you doing?" He thrusts the sword toward her and offers to sell it to her. She shrieks, "I don't want it." He snaps, unleashing a blistering tirade at her for mocking his product. She rips into him, screaming about his pathetic sales tactics. She schools him in a blistering lesson on supply and demand. Then it hits him, he finally grasps her point. He zeroes in, picturing exactly what the farmers will need. His mind races as he conjures every pest control tool in his arsenal. He claps his hands, a grin snapping onto his face as a brilliant idea ignites. He grins wildly and raves, pitching cursed headbands with feverish excitement. Mora snaps and yanks him away. The whole town agrees, his stall gives everyone the creeps. They materialize at Gimli's house without warning. Mora snaps, throwing up her hands and declaring his idiocy absolutely unbearable. Gale hisses, "I'm not his partner." Seething, he defends his masterpiece with fierce, unyielding pride. Both women watch, exasperation crackling across their faces. Gimli urges him to be more considerate. She snapped, "Who would buy such a thing here?" Silence hit as Gale chewed on the question, turning it over in her mind. He throws out the idea that it's nothing more than interior decoration. Gimli's heart drops as he grasps how dire his case really is. She demanded to know why he'd chosen that exact spot. Shock slammed into him when he learned it was illegal. Moore snapped, demanding to know why she would be reported. Gimli's grin razor-sharp as he needles Mora about her difficult partner. Gimli slams his fist and snarls at Gale, "How much did you pay the guild?" "You slammed down a staggering single gold coin for the stall." Mora reels, eyes wide, at the astronomical price. Gimli slams his fist down and snarls at him, "You've been scammed." The guild waved him off like it was nothing. "It's a busy area," they said. Gale reels as farmers toss his cursed items aside like useless junk. He collapses to the floor, despair tearing through him as his business plan lies in tatters. He dares to believe adventurers might still answer the call. That's only a temporary patch, doomed to fail over time. Gimli snapped, urging him to relocate his stall. Gale snaps that he'd been told the best spots were already taken. Gimli leans in, a roguish grin slicing across his face, and taunts, so they only looked full. Empty space yawned wide around her as she made her way over. Gimli erupts into a sharp, victorious chuckle as realization crashes over him and he sees the whole picture. Numerous guilds have planted their banners across the city. Gale bolts out the door, determined to set things right. Gimli shoots him a knowing, encouraging grin. He charges toward the mighty blacksmith's guild. The group surged forward, propelled by a newly forged, burning purpose. Mora follows, determination blazing in her eyes. Gimli thundered, "We must secure a new location." They barreled into the guild's main building. Gale peels back the veil on Farm Edge and exposes its tense, cutthroat power plays. Here, the Merchant Guild barely registers, its influence a whisper against the roar of power. Moore's mind snapped into place. They had to earn the blacksmith's trust. Armed with razor-sharp local knowledge, the artisan wields devastating power. Gimli snaps, did he snag souvenirs for the guild leaders? A dangerous grin ignites across Gale's face, the spark of a terrible idea. He hoists one of his cursed necklaces like a trophy. A black, malevolent wave of energy erupts, tearing through the air. He thrusts the divider forward, grin blazing, certain its charm will steal the show. Mora yanks his head down, snapping for him to hide it. Mora's memory snaps to Gimli. He made them as proper gifts. She snaps, "I'll handle the souvenirs myself." She thrusts a finger at the blacksmith's terrified stares. Gimli edges out from behind a nearby curtain, eyes razor-focused on the scene beyond. They burst into the guild's cavernous workshop, hammers pounding and furnaces roaring all around them. Craftsmen slam glowing iron with thunderous hammer blows. Others hunch over blueprints, scrutinizing every detail as they sort supplies into precise stacks. The forges spew a white-hot fury that sears the air and steals your breath. Gimli bellows, "This is a workshop, not an office." A harried worker urgently asks them to step aside. Gale's face flushed as panic crawled up her throat and she froze, scrambling for a next move. Gimli growls a promise, "Summon them the right way and they'll thunder to your aid." Mora and Gale lock eyes, uncertainty crackling between them. Mora rasped a sharp throat clear and braced herself to call out. Her polite "excuse me" is devoured by the noise. Gimli bellows that she must shout here. She pulls in a slow, lung-filling breath, putting the technique on full display. Sharon unleashes a thunderous bellow that rips through the air. A deafening sonic blast slams into Gale and Mora, sending them sprawling across the ground. A thunderous shout ripped through the workshop, ricocheting off every wall. Gimli thundered, his voice a brutal blow that could crack the very earth. Sonic pressure tore into a nearby stone pillar, jagged cracks racing down its surface. A newcomer storms in, scowling and ripping into everyone about the deafening racket. A young dwarf explodes, bellowing at them for their sheer, blundering stupidity. Gale and Mora's jaws dropped. There, a dwarf girl stood before them. Shirna the dwarf hurls barbed insults at the elf Gimli, who snaps back with icy, razor-sharp retorts. Gale sneers, dragging the age-old elf versus dwarf rivalry into the open. Dread claws at Mora, they fear they've approached the wrong person. Gimli roared, insisting she'll deliver proper support. This is Shirna, the guildmaster, a hard-edged brute, all force and no finesse. Gale and Shirna locked hands in a crisp, formal handshake. His hands are armored with calluses and scored with scars, living proof he's a true artisan. Her arms, carved by hammer and flame, betray a lifetime spent shaping steel at the forge. Mora's voice rips through the silence, calling his name and obliterating his concentration. Sharon snaps her head up and pins him with a fierce, unblinking stare. Gale's gaze snaps, he sees the same fierce spark blazing inside her. She too feels his mastery radiating off him. They lock eyes and a silent, mutual respect ignites between them. Gimli's brow knots, he can't fathom why they're locked in a silent stare. They both spring back, cheeks on fire, firing off frantic denials. Mora and Gimli watched, faces like stone and eyes cold, utterly unimpressed. They decide to plunge headfirst into the main topic. Gimli thrust a hand toward Gale and bellowed, "Meet Gale, a newcomer from the capital." Sharon flicks her hand aside and sneers that he can set up anywhere. She snaps that they're too swamped to lift a finger. She sizes up the havoc an unauthorized stall could unleash. She beams, praising how he handled everything with fierce, unshakable honor. She snapped they had no intention of seizing control of the town. Unlike the capital, they don't discard the damaged. They track down every flaw, mend it with pride, and wear repair like a badge of honor. That philosophy blasted her into the spotlight as the guild's unmistakable face. She exhaled a long, weary sigh, exhaustion pouring out of her. She drops into a chair, locks eyes, and confirms his name with a single, cutting word, Gale. She snarls, "Don't trust that suspicious elf." Gimli's tails roar like war drums, "Listen, but keep a grain of salt ready." Gimli pouts, snapping that Sharana's being mean. Sharon flashes a decisive smile, grabs a pen, and pledges to write him the permission letter. Cherna storms in and shatters their celebration. She smirks, her voice like a blade. "It's not that simple." She snapped, "Show me you're sincere first." A bottle of potent fire liquor explodes into view. Mora whips out a bottle with a grin and thrusts it into Shirna's hands as a gift. Gale practically explodes, shouting, "I brought a souvenir too." Mora lunges, clinging with desperate strength, as she fights to physically pin him down. He swears she'll fall head over heels for his masterpiece, the divider. He rants that she wallops him with bone-crunching force every single time. Utter shock ripped across Sharon's face. Gale beamed and thrust his latest masterpiece into the light, pride blazing in his eyes. Sharon lunged, snatching it up and scanning every inch. He beamed and chirped, "Is that Shirana?" She screamed, her voice slicing the air as she snapped, "What is it?" Gimli brazenly owned his technical idiocy. Sharon gripped the sword as awe exploded through her like a thunderbolt. Her mastery blazed through. I recognized its quality instantly. It flat-out refused to be ordinary. Gale crumpled to his knees, stunned. He pressed, "Can you really tell?" They burst into cheers, reveling in the electric click of their shared understanding. She snapped at him to drop the formalities. You erupt in praise for her razor-sharp professional expertise. Her validation hit him like a bolt, shattering the armor around his heart. Gale burst into tears, joy streaming down his face. Mora watched them bond, suspicion coiling in her chest. Sharon launched the source into a furious swing. Her razor-sharp eyes devoured its form, mapping every contour. Mora watched, her face a flat, unreadable mask. A harsh cough tore from her, and Gale's worry flared. Gimli sneered, teasing that more of them understood. Sharon squinted through the dust and shot, "Is the dust getting to you?" Nothing pierced the two artisans' focus. They didn't notice a thing. Gale erupted in thunderous praise for the Gale Master's eye. She zeroed in on the base materials, stunned by their jaw-dropping quality. She rattled off its dazzling enchantments. Gale smirked triumphant and crowed that she'd been right. She gasped, stunned by how feather-light it felt in her hands. Tension snapped tight. What came next was about to hit. A thrill shot through Gale. She had to test it. Sharon snapped, "I have to equip it." A dark, cursed aura snapped to life and spiraled into a churning, shadowy vortex. She revealed how it ravenously siphoned the life from anything it touched. She crowned it the perfect weapon. Gale cracked a grin and nodded. This was tailor-made for solo adventures. He crowed, rattling off its other resistances, one after another. Sharing put its practical enchantments to the test, sizing up their true worth. Gale froze, pulse screaming, every nerve coiled as he braced for the reveal. She snapped, "What did you just say?" He snapped, "You mean it's cool?" The moment he asked, horror ripped through Sharon. Shadowy tendrils erupted, snaking around her wrists and clamping her hands shut. She shrieked, ripping the silence in half. "What's happening?" She screamed, "I can't let go." He snapped, "Don't you have any sense of style?" Everyone panicked as Shirana yanked her praise back. Gimli howled with laughter at the sheer chaos. Gimli smirked, convinced that handing out the portions only earned praise for his skill. He shattered every expectation of what a curse artificer could be. Curiosity gnawed at her as she stared at the strange man. She snapped her head in a quick, disbelieving shake at the scene. Gale snatched the talisman and unleashed a blinding burst of light that ripped the curse away. At last, Cherna tore free from its grip. The sword and liquor sat on the table, silent and impossible to ignore. She let out a ragged sigh and declared the whole experience terrible. Moore forced out an apology, snapping that she'd warned him. Sharon doused her hands in liquor, disinfecting them on the spot. Gale snapped that he should have said it was cursed. She branded him centered and careless. Gimli tried to defuse the argument, his gruff voice grounding the heated exchange. The moment Sharon strapped on that hideous sword, regret slammed into her. She snapped a furious no the moment he offered the souvenir. She bellowed, "Everything's ruined." She blew up at him, fury lashing out as she tore into his cluelessness. She slammed her palm down and snapped, "You will never run a stall." A cold dread seized her. His cursed tools would lay waste to the town. An idea sparked to life in her mind. She locked eyes with him and demanded to know exactly how badly he wanted to stall. Mora drove a brutal elbow straight into Gale's ribs. It stood as a bold testament to his eccentric, jaw-dropping skills. Sharon's eyes narrowed, every nerve taut as she weighed Mora's earnest plea. She swallowed her pride and owned the blame. She'd caused it. She snapped, "Who is he really? Tell me his character first." Mora was blindsided, her breath ripped away in a heartbeat. Sharon declared, "I won't ask for money." She only wanted one thing, for him to hear her plea. She declared she needed only one thing. She demanded the monsters be crushed and the soul mind wiped from existence. It was a death trap that swallowed adventurers whole. The quest loomed, a brutal gauntlet of difficulty. AA. She threw down the gauntlet and snapped, "Are you up for the challenge?" Gale and Mora watched from the edge, concern knotting tight in their chests. The view snapped to the majestic royal palace, towering in silent splendor. Princess Carla discovered a truth, so shocking it shattered everything she believed. Disbelief slammed into her. It couldn't be the Empire. Vivian announced the assassins had finally cracked and confessed. The attack slammed into the fray, a ruthless gambit in the bloody struggle for succession. The first prince vowed to kill her. A ruthless power struggle for the throne erupted. The princess snapped, "How am I involved?" Seeing Vivian yanked the memory of the arranged marriage straight back into her. Carla's eyes snapped open, she'd forgotten. She winced, cheeks burning, and confessed she'd completely blanked. She flat out refused to recognize the arrangement. The state dismissed her feelings as if they never existed. Vivian tore the mask off and spelled out the first prince's motive. The marriage was a political dagger aimed straight at his throat. Even with his secrets laid bare, he'd walk free. No punishment would touch him. Chaos roared around him, and he relished every second. It was exactly what he'd wanted. Vivian rips into the Empire's fractured political strategies, exposing every crack and contradiction. Cold dread flooded Carla. She knew the first prince would strike again. An attendant hisses, voice cracking, "The kingdom is too weak." Anger erupts from her, the teacup quakes and tea flies everywhere. Fury ripping through her voice, she bellows that the engagement must be cancelled. A nearby attendant narrows his eyes, his posture bristling with stern disapproval. Vivian goes silent, drinking in every word, her face a grave, knowing mask. Carla rips her tiara off and hurls it onto the table, rage crackling in the air. Frustration claws at her until she crumples onto the bed and breathes her last. Vivian thundered that promises between nations are sacred and cannot be broken. Tears burn in her eyes, but Carla plants her feet and spits out a fierce, unshakable no. She clenches the ring in her fist. The promise it bears has been rewritten. The new party storms into the Anunnaki mine. Gale bursts in grinning and chirps, "I'm Gale, a curse officer." Mara slips into his wake and proclaims she's a support mage. Gimli snaps up a hand, flatly declaring herself out of the fight, a non-combatant. Gale glares and demands to know why their party's lineup is so lopsided. Sharon snapped, "Just get on with it." Mora snaps, "You're new to town." Gimli smirks and taunts, "Fail, and he'll crank the difficulty into overdrive." Mora's eyes snap wide. She realizes the quest has reached a rank. Gale's stomach knots. What if it surges yet again? Gimli cackles, declaring it's on the verge of S rank. Her mood drops into ice as she reveals the adventurers have gone missing. Gale and Mora lock eyes, a shared, worried understanding flashing between them. They all lock their gazes on the mine's shadowed gateway. A menacing wind ripped from the deep tunnel, howling like a wounded beast. Mora's senses scream. An extremely dangerous monster lurks within. Sharon roared, ripping into them for flinching at every whisper. Impatience claws at her as she begs them to finish this now. Mora exploded, railing against the paltry quest reward. The pay was a sick joke. Nobody would touch it. Morrow roars that they can't advance an inch without a vanguard. She snaps, "We can't face unknown monsters alone." Sharon storms forward, planting a single, decisive step. She storms forward and declares herself the party's vanguard. Gale and Mora stand frozen, mouths agape as shock punches the breath out of them. Shirana cedes, glaring at their shocked faces. He scribbles more notes, slamming home just how wildly unusual this whole situation is. Gimli slams a fist down and roars a thunderous, wholehearted yes to the plan. Sharon proclaims she's shockingly strong. She exploded into a goofy, over-the-top flex, bulging her arms like a cartoon to prove it. Mora's voice cracks with nerves as she begs, "Can I really pull this off?" A ragtag, off-kilter party barrels toward the mine's entrance. Mora's jaw clenched. They still believed they could snatch victory. She stakes her last hope on Gale's arcane relics. The party roars to life, banners snapping and hearts thundering, poised to charge headfirst into the quest. Gimli lifts a grizzled hand in a fierce farewell, hurling them straight into the teeth of a perilous journey. They plunged into the mine, slipping past rows of creaking wooden machinery that groaned in the dark. Gale hoists a lantern, its glow slashing the night to reveal their path. A strange, bone-deep howl rips up from below, echoing back. Regret slammed into Mora. She wished she'd never come, and Sharuna stepped close, voice steady and warm, calming her trembling heart. Heart pounding, she forces out the question, "Is Shirna telling the truth?" Sharuna scoffs, insisting the spine-chilling sound is nothing more than the wind. Gale roars the mine's name into the room, dogs howling. Sharon jabbed a finger at the neatly arranged stones. Gale and Mora shot their gazes upward, wonder mirrored in each other's eyes. She hoists a massive hunk of iron ore into the air. The mine pulses with thick veins of lead and glinting, rare mithril. She exclaims, eyes blazing, "That's a brilliant, vital mind." Gale and Mora froze, jaws dropping as the sight stole their breath. They stopped dead at the yawning cavern, its vast interior glittering like a field of stars. They both gasp and declare, "It's breathtaking." Sharon rises, chest thrust forward, and proclaims why her people made this land their home. She urged them to steel themselves and stop jumping at every sound. Mora clamps down on rising panic, forcing slow breaths as the thought of undead claws at her mind. A sharp yelp rips from her throat. She senses an unseen presence. Startled, she spun, her eyes raking the pitch-black passage. A solitary droplet plunges through the shadow. A terrifying stone face rips into view, mouth split wide as it unleashes a banshee scream. Mora choked on a gasp as horror stamped her face into a stone-cold mask. She jabbed a finger and screamed, "Undead creatures." Sharon's gut twists as she watches Gale beam. What's behind that smile? A man's full face, hewn from stone, suddenly fills the frame. Gale scoffs, calling it nothing but a cold stone statue. The exquisitely detailed figure stands petrified, terror locking it to the spot. My eyes snap wide as cold dread floods in. I know something is wrong. A young blacksmith gapes, breath snatched away by the statue's flawless craftsmanship. Gale nods, all lighting his face. He agrees the craftsmanship is breathtaking. Those two artisan fools snagged a size up. She plants her foot and steps forward, resolve flashing like steel. She locks her gaze ahead, a grim mask settling over her face. She slips through the crudely built wooden doorway. Sharonut lunges in to crash their geeky discussion. Mora yanks them forward, dragging them along and snapping their heads toward what she demands they see. Sharon and Gale stare ahead, still reeling, confusion buzzing in their veins. Shock rips across their faces, jaws drop and eyes go wide. Their eyes slam onto a massive, silent horde of stone people, packed shoulder to the horizon. Their faces snap into twisted masks of pure horror. The blacksmith's gaze slices across the statues, each one shaped into a wildly different form. A bone-deep wrongness slammed into Mora, an unnatural dread that tightened the air around her. He gapes, his own face a frozen mask of shock. Their eyes locked, and her expression snapped into a grim mask. Gale's pulse spikes as he locks eyes with a familiar face in the crowd. He presses Sharona for an explanation. Her finger jabs at the bald man. She recognizes him instantly. Her gaze snaps to another adventurer she instantly recognizes. Behold the lost adventurers from Farm Edge. A sickening truth hit them. The missing had been petrified into cold, lifeless stone. The entire party staggered back, horror ripping across every face at the discovery. A silent army of adventurers, petrified into stone, stood locked mid-stride, grim statues frozen in time. Mora's breath hitched as every horrifying, lifelike detail slammed into her. A lone voice sliced through the hush, gasping, "What is this place?" Her scream tore through the silence. How is this even possible? A hand snapped shut as sudden, grim realization slammed into them. Gale's blood froze. This was the monster's handiwork. His face hardened into stone, resolve burning in his eyes. Mora's head snapped around, scanning the room, her eyes blown wide with raw terror. Her eyes snapped into the darkness, every nerve buzzing with raw, restless fear. Sharon's voice sliced through the chaos. "Stay on high alert." Mora's eyes snapped to the doorway. They were right beside an exit. Gale's breath hitched. He spotted familiar faces among the fallen adventurers. Sharon anchored the front and the flank, razor-focused and ready to repel anyone who tried to break through. Gale warned Mora this was bad. She snapped to a single terrifying conclusion, basilisk or gorgon. Gale inhaled and the unmistakable straw and feathers, tang of a chicken coop, slammed into her. Feathers lay strewn in every direction around him. Every clue slammed into place, spelling out a terrifying conclusion. A monstrous beak lunged out of the shadows like a jagged spear. Gale's eyes snapped to the enemy, a cockatrice. The earth buckled and split beneath its crushing mass. A grotesque, half-chicken, half-snake creature slithered into view. A disaster-level monster, bristling with deadly, world-ending abilities. Moro's eyes locked on the beast as it barreled straight at him. The cunning creature sprang its trap, blindsiding them with a cold, calculated ambush. Gale's roar split the silence, a sharp warning ripped straight to his companions. He barked Mora fall back to the rear. They pulled off a perfect, lightning-fast switch. The creature unleashed a blood-chilling screech, coiling like a spring ready to snap. Gale blasted forward and charged the monster alone. The cockatrice launched itself, beak and talons snapping as it dove to strike him. Get ready to unleash the small, enchanted dart. A colossal serpent tail rockets up from below. He launched the dart, it sliced the air and slammed dead center into the bullseye. The tiny projectile slammed into its target, striking dead center. Cursed energy tore free from the embedded dart. The monster froze mid-roar, jaws gaping wide. A predatory grin split his face. The target was a sitting duck. Shock ripped through Sharon as the dart's effectiveness became painfully clear. Gale bellowed, "Attack now." A plain, single-use enchanted dart, small, unadorned, and meant to be discarded. He warned, eyes blazing, that the paralysis wouldn't last long. Sharon nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. She slammed her power into the earth, cracking the ground beneath her. She barreled forward, swinging her colossal hammer in a thunderous arc. Her eyes narrowed as fear compressed into a razor-edged stare. She hurtled forward, a living blur tearing through the air. She catapulted herself straight up, shooting into the sky. Mora Watcher explodes into a relentless 5-hit combo. Morrow's warning landed like a punch, "It's not over." Panic seized her features, warping them into a frozen mask. From beneath, the snake's tail shot up, lashing out to strike. Mora fired back in a heartbeat, "Got it." She blasted Sharon with a strength-enhancing spell, raw power surging through her veins. Sharon's muscles ballooned, humming with a raw, newly awakened power. She unleashed a thunderous roar as raw energy crackled through her veins. Every extra word I spoke gnawed at the spell until its effect snapped short. Sharon snapped, "That's enough." She strained, forcing the massive jaws apart as every muscle screamed. A raw, guttural grunt ripped from her as she strained with every ounce of strength. She swore she'd force them to witness the raw power she held. She would unleash iron-forged strength, crashing down like a blacksmith's hammer. With a savage pull, she ripped the monster's head in two. Dark blood geysered from the fatal wound. She slammed into the ground as the beast keeled over and crashed down behind her. She panted, spent to the bone, victory radiating from her like a living war cry. She roared, "It's a complete victory." They all nodded, yeah, that was a hair's breadth escape. Gale's lingering dart snagged them from the jaws of death. They slammed him with questions, demanding he spill the secret of his cursed object. Gale snapped, insisting it was perfectly normal. He revealed he'd used a ghost's ashes. It fused paralysis with defense-piercing power. Confusion ripped through them. This ghost made no sense. He painted his skeleton shrouded in a billowing black cloak. Nervousness snaked across their faces, tightening with every heartbeat. Gale snapped, "The lantern hides a scythe." They screamed, "It's the Grim Reaper." It was a disaster-level demigod, a walking cataclysm. Gale scoffed and waved it off, insisting it was no big deal. Mora leveled him with an unimpressed stare. "If you shot them, a confident thumbs up." Mora demanded, "What did you do to a demigod?" Grinning, he announced he'd crafted an item. His revelation hit her like a punch, words died in her throat. A stunned hush fell over them. His item had been forged from divine materials. A voice hissed, "Sharona, be careful next time. An adventurer lives by a single iron rule, never be careless." Mora's voice broke as she blurted that Sharona looked like she was dying. She snapped that anyone would crack and drop their guard. A thunderbolt of realization ripped through her. They all stared down at the vanquished monster. Gale's voice sliced the air. "What does this mean for our quest?" They blasted their way to the AA rank in Anarchy Mine. All three leapt skyward, whoops tearing from their throats as pure joy surged through them. Gale's voice cut through the room. They had to report to Gimli. He blurted, "Can we use the mine now?" The unidentified monster revealed itself, a cockatrice. Gale's heart thundered. In that instant, he felt like a real adventurer. He spun to speak to the stunning Mora. Mora stares down the cockatrice, pulse quick as she debates whether its flesh is even edible. Gale zeroes in on the subjugation parts. Nothing else matters. Sharon spits idiots at them. It's crawling with lethal poison. It masquerades as a chicken, but every feather hides lethal poison. Mora snaps, "Why was it in a mine?" Gale stops dead, jaw tightening as she turns that undeniable question over in her mind. He flashes a grin, insisting it must have taken the mine for a coup. The air explodes with the rancid stench of rotten eggs. Gale glared at Mora and snapped, "What did you just step on?" She stares down at the shattered fragments. Gale drops to his knees and leans in, eyes drilling into the scattered pieces. He scooped up the scattered shards. The paper-thin curve told him everything in eggshell. Mora's eyes snapped to the eggshell. It looks suspiciously tiny. Gale's mind races as she weighs the fallout. He demanded they remember what a chicken coop is for. Horror blooms across his face as the truth hits. Moore's eyes snapped wide as that same terrible truth slammed into him. She snaps that it's where they come to lay their eggs. They spot Sharon, nailed to the spot as panic grips her like iron. She screams that this is an utter catastrophe. A faint, high-pitched chirp cuts through the darkness and echoes. Sharon's head snaps up as fresh chirps surge and swarm around them. A baby cockatrice explodes into view, its beak flung wide open. Another freshly hatched monster writhes wildly on the ground. A horde of the creatures bursts forth from the cracks. The party froze in place, eyes wide, abject terror etched on every face. They blundered headfirst into the creatures' nesting ground. Gale clings to the hope they'll see them as parents. The drooling monsters rip his theory to shreds, proving him utterly wrong. His hopeful grin bolts into place, locking onto his face like a brittle mask. A jolt slams through him. He spots his mistake the instant they close in. Mora snarls, confirming they possess the cold, hungry eyes of predators. A raw scream rips from the three as they spin and bolt. They sprint, lungs burning and hearts hammering, then slam into a dead end. The passage plunges into an abandoned, sealed-off mine, its entrance slammed shut and left to rot. Sharon slams her palm down and bellows, "We have no choice, we fight." A ravenous horde of hatchlings barrels forward. Sharon rockets forward, her massive hammer primed to crush. The hammer crashes into the monster's skull, shattering bone and unleashing a guttural roar. The blow detonates, shockwaves tearing through the cavern. She roared that her hammer could pulverize solid rock. She slams down earth-shattering blows, yet they glance off him as if he were carved from stone. It pleads with Sharon to hang on, just a little longer. She snaps to the brutal truth: this battle is far worse than the first. Hundreds of babies tower over the adults, each one dwarfing any grown person. They carried the snake's furious fertility, spawning offspring in unstoppable waves. Ravenous hunger and feral ferocity are etched into their bones, a brutal legacy passed down from their parents. Their newborn husks, thoughtless and single-minded, every gaze locked on their prey. They fling discretion to the winds and barrel forward with wild, shameless abandon. Sharona is being swallowed alive by the crushing mass of their sheer numbers. She throws down the gauntlet and snarls, "Come at me." The instant her own words swarm around her like angry hornets, regret rips through her. More bellows that her support stands ready. She detonates the all-abilities enhanced spell, flooding every skill with a savage surge of power. She slams her palm onto the glowing magical seal. Sharon's agility surges in an instant, her reflexes snap razor-sharp, every dodge and move blazing obvious to everyone watching. She roars as a fresh blast of power explodes through her. Mora will flood her with raw magic, blasting her abilities into overdrive. It hits her, her progress is crawling, far too slow. She coiled like a spring, every muscle tuned for speed, gambling everything on one decisive strike. Now the moment's here, launch one final, desperate charge. She catapulted into the leap, blazing with the iron certainty she'd win this. She erupts into a tornado of destruction, pulverizing them in her path. Her enhanced abilities forge her into a near-invincible force. They're everywhere, so many they blur the horizon. Monsters pour forward like a raging tide, pressing closer with every heartbeat. Their stamina bleeds dry and their resolve buckles. Sharon grits her teeth, every breath a battle as her limits barrel toward her. Gale grits his teeth and admits he's hitting his limit too. Mora crumples to her knees, every last spark of her magic snuffed out. Desperation tore through her voice as she implored Gale for a cursed tool. His debuffs bounce off these simple-minded creatures like pebbles off a fortress, utterly useless. He declares curses aren't spells, but reflexes you hardwire into yourself through repetition. The baby creatures' tiny minds remain untouched, the effect has no hold on them. Every trick and tool that pulled him through past quests betrayed him now. Cold dread tightens in Mora's chest as every curse he hurls fizzles into nothing. The ravenous horde surged forward, a relentless wall chewing up ground with every thunderous step. The party crumpled, exhausted to the bone and utterly overwhelmed. Sharona, battered and bloodied, steels herself. She knows they need a new plan. Mora begs for an item they can use on themselves. Gale whipped out a handful of trinkets he'd been saving for decoration. A cursed headband, crudely stitched and thrumming with hungry malice. The second bursts into view, a bird-shaped mask forged from pure darkness. Third up, the demonic horn of lamentation, an ornament dripping with anguish. He sneers, dismissing their effects as nothing but theatrics. He roars that they cloak allies in impenetrable defenses and bathe them in fierce, instant healing. Sharon exclaims, this is exactly what they need. Mora slams a jagged defensive wall into place, buying the others the precious seconds they need. Sharonad slams her palm down and barks at Gale to arm her with the gear this instant. He clenches a grotesque, stitched headband in his hand, like a trophy ripped straight from a nightmare. The camera slams in, baring its crude, porous surface. They recoil mid-share, shrieking that the item is gross. Gale cinches it onto her, voice razor-tight as she snaps, "Be patient." Dark energy erupted into a writhing maelstrom, the instant the horn locked into place. Sharon gasps, eyes wide, as every ounce of exhaustion evaporates from her in an instant. The wall holds firm. He thrusts the next item into view. Slip on the mask of darkness, and midnight snaps into daylight, while every toxin fizzles harmlessly. Sharon snaps the mask over her face and gasps, "I can see." Mora bellows a warning. The defensive wall is seconds from collapse. Gale thrusts the horn forward, an ancient relic that floods its bearer with titanic strength. Mora's eyes snapped wide, pure shock and raw terror blazing in his gaze. Sharona, snap out of this confusion, let's go. Gale's artifacts slammed into place, crowning Sharon in her full armor. Gale grins, chest puffed with pride, and throws out, "Isn't my bizarre creation cool?" Sharon's eyes widen as an unbelievable 5 times strength boost rips through them. She feels a tidal surge of raw power slam into her, crackling and racing straight down to her fingertips. Mora's defensive magic wall erupts, splintering into a rain of jagged shards. The horde of baby cockatrices explodes forward, relentless and unstoppable. Mora bellows that their defenses have been breached. She screamed to Sharon that monsters were swarming in from behind. The massive hammer whips through the air, a thunderous blur. The hammer slams down, delivering a devastating, bone-crushing impact. Sharon unleashes a single thunderous blow that reduces the monster to dust. Gale and Mora freeze, mouths agape, as the shocking display erupts before them. The entire mind convulses, shaken to its core by the impact. They plastered notes everywhere, flaunting jaw-dropping power, no extras, just pure buffs. She erupts into a triumphant roar, exhilaration flooding her, until she feels utterly invincible. She cackles, eyes blazing, utterly consumed by the intoxicating rush of battle. She roars, announcing the birth of a devastating new skill. She unleashes her new technique, the infinite reversal slash, carving the air and turning the battle inside out. She keeps howling with wild, unhinged laughter as the fight rages around her. Her eyes blazed, wide with the electric ecstasy of battle and unrestrained joy. Mora's gaze cuts sharp as she snaps. Do any of these items contain a dangerous component? Gale crackles with intensity, revealing how cursed artifacts lock together, and their dark energies explode into a devastating, multiplied power. Mora's eyes widen as Sharon rockets into a euphoric runner's high. The final baby cockatrice plants itself before her, unleashing a piercing screech that rips the air. Sharing up gathers a storm of power, poised to unleash the final, finishing blow. She plants her feet, lungs burning and chest heaving, panting as the battlefield finally falls silent. Thick, ink-black goo oozed and plopped from the cursive equipment. Gale grips the talisman and unleashes a blinding surge that rips the curses to dust. They trade stretches, exhaling in raw relief as the heavy gear finally clatters off. She snapped, "I can't go back like this, I'd be mortified." Sorrow claws at Gale. Every creation he loved lies stripped down to cold, second-hand scraps. She flaunts the piece she wore, insisting it deserves premium status. She crumples, her body exploding in searing agony. Gale choked out, "The poison's devouring me from the inside right now." Mora scoffs that almost no one would dare strap on a cursed relic. But artifacts that can annihilate hordes wield power beyond measure. Gale urged them to lie still and ride out the pain until it faded. They collapsed, gasping and spent, every ounce of strength drained after the grueling, drawn-out fight. They collapse onto the jagged, uneven floor of the mine. The shot slams in close, the mine's stone wall laid bare, every grain and fissure carved like a scar. Sharna collapses to the ground, utterly spent, every last scrap of strength drained from her. Mora roars praise, hailing Sharon's jaw-dropping performance in battle. Her magical power bled dry, every last spark snuffed out. Gale ripped open his pack, heart sinking as he counted how his supplies had dwindled. Sharon roared, "This time for sure." Mora presses on, roaring, "We've secured the Inanaki mine." Gale drops a bomb. The quest's difficulty level is AA. They erupt in triumphant cheers, proclaiming the quest finally complete. They all confess none of them would have come if they'd known. Gale freezes as a thunderclap of realization rips through him. He glares at the cockatrice nest and demands to know what it means. He's jolted by the same strange, gnawing unease that crept over him earlier. Thunderous footsteps hammered through the cavern, each impact rattling the stone and spawning long, hungry echoes. He flashes back to the shattered eggshells strewn across the ground. A towering silhouette storms forth from the darkness. The creature rips the sky apart with a furious, bone-rattling screech. A brand-new, colossal cockatrice rears up, dwarfing the utterly spent party beneath it. Cherna watches from the edge, her battered face carved into a grim mask. Gale snaps the first one was a hen. He zeroes in on their razor-sharp, deadly talons. Mora's panic flips to disbelief when the fearsome horde turns out to be nothing but a squawking tide of fluffy chicks. Gale bellows this new one's a rooster. Sharona's jaw dropped, she just found out it was a man. Gale gasps this one's massive, way bigger than the first. The massive rooster barrels straight toward the small party. Morris roars that a third round is impossible. Sharon snapped her hand into a tight fist, a sharp, dripping out as determination flared. Rage rips from her in a raw roar as she snaps, darn it. Morris snaps, barking at them both to pull themselves together. The opponent explodes with fury, its nest has been breached. The camera slams into a tight close-up on the slain hen's head. A grisly carpet of dead baby cockatrices blankets the ground. The rooster's eyes snapped wide, blazing with absolute volcanic fury. Sharona snarled, it actually dares to be angry. She sneered and hurled, you fucking chicken, at the rooster. The rooster erupts, spitting a thick, billowing cloud of white mist. Gale freezes as a strange mist coils in, a deathly chill ripping through his bones. A wall of danger slams into him, he bellows a warning. Sharona glared at the rooster and snapped, don't you dare underestimate me. Gale's scream slices the air as he orders Sharona to hit the deck, now. He barrels forward, tackling her and flinging her out of the way. A white mist surges across the cavern floor. Sharona screams, what's happening, as they slam into the ground. Her chest tightens, she knows instantly, it's the legendary petrification breath. The rooster keeps unleashing a deadly white mist, choking the air around it. The mist's touch petrifies everything it grazes, snapping the world into cold, unyielding stone. This was how the other adventurers met their doom. The rooster's eyes blaze as it crouches, coiling like a spring before lunging again. Gale bellowed, the second wave is coming. Heads up, the breath lashes out only a short distance. Her blood runs cold, their escape route's been sealed off. Gale and Shirna dive in, baiting the monster and yanking its attention away. Mora clenches her fists, she's got to smash her way through. She grits her teeth, channels every ounce of power into one desperate blow, and the wall doesn't crack. Gale and Sharon sprint back toward Mora, panic clawing at their throats. Mora's breath catches as they suddenly whirl and bolt into a panicked retreat. She demanded to know why they'd been so brutally cornered. The hen's tail, turned to stone, juts out and bars their way. Sharna, Mora, and Gale shriek, raw terror ripping through their voices. The rooster unleashes a devastating strike that catapults them into the sky. They slam into the cavern floor, dust and rubble exploding around them. The massive cockatrice unleashes a low, bone-rattling growl. Gale's blood runs cold as they realize just how dire their situation is. Mora's run out of stones for the wall. Gale yells, there's a shield right here. Mora's eyes blaze, you mean Sharon. The rooster crouches low, draws in a thunderous breath, and primes a petrifying blast to turn anything in its path to stone. Mora slashes frantic strokes across the page, carving out one last desperate plan. Charana plants herself in front of her two friends, becoming a living shield. She commands them to vanish into her shadow. Gale snaps, voice cutting through the air, what are you talking about? The rooster erupts, spewing a lethal, petrifying mist. She shares the vow, steeling herself as she swears to carry out her duty without fail. Gale howls his name, desperation shredding his voice. He plants his hand firmly on her shoulder. Sharon rips off her facade and confesses she could never bring herself to hate Gale. Mora bursts into tears, clinging to her as if losing her would rip her world to pieces. Sharon gathers her courage and fires one final, desperate question. She entrusted the guild to their care. She pins her hopes on Gimli, pray he rips into it and gives it everything he's got. Regret claws at her for never saying that to her face. Gale lunges, her fingers closing on the stone as she wrenches it around. A shimmering Dispel Curse seal snapped into existence above them. The petrified shell explodes outward, shredding flesh as it peels from his body. Her eye rips free from the stone, revealed at last. Her hand slumps, lifeless, back to her side. Sharon's jaw drops as she stares at Gale, confusion exploding across her face. Her hands snapped completely back to normal. The two women leaned in, voices snapping. How on earth had he pulled that off? He beams, voice electric, and rips into an excited breakdown of how Dispel curse ability works. Sharana and Mora freeze, words ripped from their throats. Gale snarled, it's like locking eyes with a gorgon. A cold, electric realization slams into him. Animal-type monsters can wield curses. Sharon steps into the light and unveils her brand-new discovery. She snaps eyes on the cockatrice. The monster panted, chest heaving, every ragged breath screaming exhaustion. Moore roared, the tide has turned. She squeezes the last drops of her magic into one final, desperate buff. She's about to unleash a strength spell on Charana. They've set Shirna up to strike. Gale then unleashes the final, crushing blow. Gale and Sharon hurtled forward, shoulder to shoulder. The monster's serpent tail lashes out like a living whip, snapping forward to strike. Fearless, Sharon surged forward to meet the serpent. She rockets forward, driving her earth-shattering blacksmith's charge straight into the fray. The impacts blasted a shockwave, tearing through the air. She slams the serpent's head into the earth and pins it there. Shirna cackles, shredding the monster's pathetic ambush with merciless glee. She jeers as its breath is ripped away. Gale sprints along the serpent's petrified spine. Mara roared, Gale, give it everything, no holding back. Gale's eyes blazed with fierce determination. He slides into position behind the rooster. He goads the beast, daring it to wake up. He will plunge it into an eternal slumber. He ripped open his full arsenal of curses and blasted every forbidden technique in a blistering, all-out onslaught. He bellows a clearance sale on cursed items, shoving every one into bargain bins. He slams his ultimate attack into his foe at point-blank range. The onslaught barrels straight into the cockatrice, smashing the beast with bone-rattling force. A monstrous beast lies smothered beneath a mountain of skulls. It staggers, wounded but fighting tooth and nail to stay alive. It harbors a strange, ticking object. Gale roared at the chicken bastard, her words cutting like knives. He stalls with words, pushing the fishing off until later. The cockatrice crumples at last, collapsing to the ground, utterly vanquished. Its form melted away, pouring itself into a chaotic pile of items. Skulls gaped from the dirt, cursed tools strewn across the earth like lethal relics. What remained writhed into a grotesque, bubbling abomination. Mora's voice snaps, did you actually use everything? Gale's voice cracked as he confessed he had no clue which option would work. Horror rips through Mora at the sight of his sheer recklessness. A tiny object rockets skyward. Morrow's voice tore through the silence, warning that the world was about to end. Gale's gaze snapped to the small cuckoo clock. The clock snaps into a menacing tick, each beat slicing the silence. Sharana says she told Gale to unleash everything she had and hold nothing back. Gale's voice falters as he confesses he might be going too far. A dark energy surges, coiling itself around the clock. It explodes in a colossal, earth-shattering blast. The powerful blast slams into Gale and hurls him backward. Morris exploded, bellowing that Gale was a complete idiot. Thick, choking smoke and oozing sludge swamp the mine. Mora flails in the fetid, sucking mud, fighting to keep her head above the filthy water. Sharonis hurls the mud from her mouth like it's poison, gagging as she snarls, it stinks. She cried out, is Mora still alive? Mora rages, furious as her cloak lies shredded to tatters and utterly ruined. Sharon snaps, where's Gale? The cavern's ceiling convulses as a bone-deep rumble tears through the rock. Horror rips through them as the truth crashes down. They stumble upon Gale, knocked out and dangling upside down. Gale jolts awake, voice cutting through the dark. What was that shaking? It hits him, the ceiling shudders, stones peel loose, and a cave-in is starting. Mori bellows, escape, and sends them all sprinting. Rocks start plummeting from the ceiling. A young adventurer snaps their head up as terror rips through them. The trio tore across the wooden bridge, feet hammering the planks. A colossal boulder hurtles down from above, thunderous and relentless, intent on crushing the adventurers. The mine tunnel caves in behind them, sealing off the way out. The ground rips open beneath a crushing, unbearable pressure. The earth gaped, sliced by jagged scars left when the mine collapsed. Mora and Gale collapse into their seats, utterly spent, relief finally washing over them. A rogue rock plummeted from above and bonked them both square on the heads, cartoon stars popping over their stunned faces. Sharon erupted, tearing into Gale with blistering fury for destroying the mine. The mine's mouth has been swallowed by a towering, jagged mountain of rubble, completely impassable. Gale snaps, insisting the quest was completed, at least. Mora demands they be properly rewarded for their efforts. At the mention of a reward, Sharon's face snapped into a mask of seething rage. She launches herself at Gale, teeth bared, demanding he pay for the damages. Gale snapped that he'd thrown himself into danger to shield them. Sharon snarled, mining explosion criminals. She howls over her fading berserk courage, and the hammer ripped from her grasp. She erupts, screaming what a day, as pure, searing frustration rips through her. Just a stone's throw away, a wooden fence held fast, every plank unbroken. A hand claws its way out of the dirt right beside us. The cloaked Gimli hacked, lungs on fire as the chilling truth hit her, she'd nearly died. Recognition hits her. Gale isn't just skilled, she's an extraordinary curse artificer. She kept a safe distance, yet the blast still ripped through and swallowed her. Seeing his power up close hit us like a godsend. Perched on the cliff's edge, she watched the trio below tear into each other, their bickering slicing through the wind. Cursed items, she intoned, obey like true artifacts. The party slumps, spent and gasping, amid the shattered wreckage of their hard-won victory. The following day, they stormed back into the ruined mine. A young adventurer stands frozen, his body cruelly turned into unyielding stone. Gale's palms spark as he gathers raw energy, readying his dispel curse ability. The stone shell shatters with a jagged crack and tumbles away from his face. Penelope's voice ripped through the night as she hurled her beloved's name, Charlie. His breath catches the instant he sees her. He's stunned. She tracked him down. Mora's voice rips through the chaos as she urges them onward, keep rescuing the others. Reunited at last, they crashed into each other's arms, tears pouring down as they vowed they'd get married. Gale's gaze lingers on them, a warm, happy smile spreading across his face. He thrusts a cursed talisman into the couple's hands, smiling as doom slips into their lives. Mora and Penelope ripped into him, furious over the inappropriate present. The young couple freezes, jaws dropping as they gape at the bizarre item before them. They fling themselves into each other's arms, relief washing over them as happiness explodes into laughter. Smash cut to the town of Farmage. Gimli booms a cheerful welcome across the Adventurers Guild. Sharon storms in, a sour cloud trailing behind her, sapping the room's warmth. A stool screeches across the wooden floor. Sharon slams down at the counter, annoyance crackling in her stare. She snaps, this guild's a ghost town. Gimli flashes a sly grin and taunts, you looking for a fight. Sharing out slammed one of Gale's darts onto the counter with a sharp, ringing clack. Gimli snaps, what's wrong with a simple dart? She snatches the loop free and leans in, eyes razor-sharp as she inspects every twist of its thread. Her eyes snapped wide as shock slammed through her the moment she saw it. Shock slammed through her and she snapped at Sherna, what on earth is this? She slams the piece down, eyes blazing, and proclaims it's a genuine artifact, not a joke. She gapes in disbelief as Gale casually hands them away like they're nothing. Gimli's face erupts into a wide, intrigued grin. She leans in, whispering she'd heard, he's an adventurer from the capital. Word spread like wildfire, he was a member of an S-rank party. Sharon watches, eyebrow cocked and jaw tight, radiating sharp skepticism and cold, unimpressed disdain. Gimli's grin widened, a booming laugh escaping as he watched the dwarf's reaction. Sharon clicked her tongue sharply, annoyance radiating the moment the topic came up. She scoffs at the thought, someone like that wouldn't just drop in here on a whim. She bursts in, breathless and grinning, proclaiming the adventurers who returned to stone have all been cured. Even the church abandoned hope and branded it a curse. At the mention of a curse, Gimli's eyes snap into narrow, hard slits. Sharing a rest, she buried her head in her hand and sank into thought. Gimli whips back her sleeve to reveal a hand that had turned to stone, now fully restored and pulsing with life. A flashback bursts in, showing Gale and her team hoisting the rescued toward safety. Survivors now slump into the church's clinic, bodies finally surrendering to a shaky, hard-won rest. Sharana warns the church keeps a wary distance from Gale's power, watching it like a coiled beast. Gimli narrows his eyes and delves into the true nature of his ability. She snarls, eyes blazing. He unleashed his dispel curse skill. Sharon swallows hard, her voice cracking as she forces out, he did. Gimli blurts out, has Sherna taken an interest in me? She remembers him locking onto the petrified form and instantly declaring it a curse. He banished sickness from everyone, no medicine, no holy rites. Sharon's gaze drops and her mind snaps into focus as she plots her next move. She clamps her hands to her temples, adrenaline and doubt colliding as she scrambles for what to do next. She narrows her eyes and snaps, are they just ordinary adventurers? Gimli's grin flares as he announces he's about to qualify for a rank up. Sharon snarled, "You're a sly vixen and a deceitful tanuki." Gimli's smile snaps into something dangerous as he steps forward and demands, "What do you truly want, Sharonet?" The two powerful guild masters squared off, eyes locked and the air crackling with raw tension. Sharona explodes with excitement, declaring she's just recruited Gale into her guild. Gimli roars, "There's no rule stopping us, nothing forbids that." She beams, eyes blazing. Sharon's strategic move just sealed her approval. Sharon smirks, every fiber of her being roaring with the certainty she made the right call. They lock eyes, wordless understanding ignites between them. After sharing it, he spun on his heel and strode out of the guild hall. She seethes under her breath about how maddening her rival is. From the back of his mind, Gil unleashes a thunderous sneeze. Mora flinched from the dust, disgust burning across her face as she barked, "Turn away." Gale scoffs, Sharona's rough, she doesn't pull her punches. Mora's grin flares, they're already picturing the pile of profits they'll pull in. She hails him as a hero one moment and condemns him as a mind-crushing villain the next. Miners heave and claw through the rubble, racing to clear the collapsed tunnel. Mora's eyes cut like steel as she snaps, "You actually joined the Blacksmith Guild." He thrusts the two guild tags, dangling from his neck, into her view. Morrow's jaw snaps open. This guild only lets the elite in. She snapped, what kind of work are they making him do? A spark of hope flares in her. Could his talents finally be getting the recognition they deserve? He snaps that the criticism never ends, that everyone's always tearing him down. He dove headfirst into crafting interior decorations for them. He flaunts the white bone vase like a trophy, pride blazing in his eyes. Mora recoiled, dread clawing at him, as he confronted the grotesque sense of design buried inside. More questions erupted as Gale labored from dawn to dusk on the skull vase. Gale strides in, grinning, and proudly unveils his creation. He poured everything into making its design utterly one of a kind. Mora's eyes flash. She suddenly grasps just how invaluable it is to every spellcaster. Gale's excitement knocks her sideways, confusion flickering in her eyes, but she plants her feet and insists. Recovering a manner demands surgical precision from any mage. She plunges into tedious rituals, brewing potions and sinking into numbing meditation. The mere thought of sleeping beside that grotesque vase freezes her blood. Crushed, she crumples to the floor and screams that this is simply impossible to accept. Sharon bursts in, eyes blazing, demanding to know what sparked the chaos between Gale and Mora. Gale blurted to Shirna that Mora had become upset. Sharon sneered at the skull vase, contempt blazing in her eyes. She snarls she'll banish him the instant he sells it. She shoved him aside and snapped, "I meant useful, not grotesque." Sharon thrusts the cockatrice's head into his hands like a brutal trophy. She snaps, "Take it, collect your reward." She slams her hand down and demands he split the reward fairly with Mora. She flashes a mischievous grin and tosses a teasing warning his way, "Don't fall in love." Memory slams into her, he still owes her a reward. Mora explodes, snarling that no one will share or hijack his demand for payment. Sharon swears she's tearing the mine back to life. She swears she'll guide him straight to the perfect stall spot. Her expression snaps into something new. She's about to reveal something else. Gale freezes, bewilderment flaring as the other snaps into sudden, icy seriousness. She ushers him to a massive, shrouded object, its true shape hidden beneath the cover. A sly grin curls her lips as she starts peeling back the veil, teasing the secret beneath. Gale reels, eyes wide, and snaps, "What is that object?" A colossal organ thunders, fueling the cockatrice's breath. Her voice drops, she pronounces it the source of the petrification. Gale's eyes flare as he brands the organ's power a curse. He leans in and reveals how he banished the curse that had shackled Shirna. Sharana snaps that he forged it from the rare material. The monster's priceless organ pulses, radiating raw, untapped power. It hit Gale like a thunderclap. This item was worth a fortune. Sharon beams, pressing the material into his hands and urging him to take it. She yanks her foot back at the last second, robbing him of the chance to plant it there. Gale's gut clenched, something about her intentions screamed danger. She flashes him a sly, fang-bearing grin. A brilliant idea ignites behind her eyes. She snaps, "I will." "I'll teach you," she proclaims, confidence blazing in her eyes. She will drag him into a brutal crash course on supply and demand. Whispers of Gale's enchantments swept across oceans and echoed through the courts of distant empires. Behold the empire's central underground treasure vault, a cavern of glittering spoils buried deep beneath the earth. Inside the imperial palace, Prince Burial seethed with volcanic fury. Lisette roared that she hadn't failed her mission. The prince snatches her face into his hand, his grip a brutal, unrelenting vice. He explodes, accusing her of brazenly disguising her failures with shameless excuses. Burial snarled, fury blazing as she demanded, "Have I been underestimating him? She's nothing more than the woman who commands an assassination guild." Terror clawed at her throat as she choked out a trembling apology. He flings her aside and snarls, "You fool." He sneers as her earlier swagger shatters into failure. He bellowed that he believed she was skilled. He refuses to accept her failure. He'd tear the world apart before letting it happen. The prince flings the gate open, revealing a shadowed chamber beyond. Lisette's breath hitched and a small, terrified cry ripped from her throat. Inside, a stark room yawns open, a single chest planted dead center. Her fingers dig in as she pries open the Empire's most wicked artifact. Deep inside, the Demon King's grotesque heart throbs, a warped, pulsing core of living evil. The artifact cages the Demon King's very essence. A terrifying miasma bursts from the cursed object. The prince reveals the heart devours lives. Delight dances in its eyes as it finally claims the long-awaited meal. He sneered and spat the words at her. "It prefers useless scum." The prince's gaze snapped into a razor slit, malice crackling behind it. He slams her head down toward the cursed heart. He locks eyes with her and snaps, "Do you understand why we're here?" She chokes out, "I don't know why." He slammed the pulsing heart inches from her face, its frantic beats hammering in her ears. Burial erupts into a wild cackle and snaps, the reasons obvious. Not a soul would dare set foot near that deadly room. The miasma swallowed life itself, ripping vitality from anyone nearby and carving out an eerie no-man's land for their private meeting. He sneers that even the faintest touch will snuff you out. She pleads for him to stop as he shoves her aside. The prince watches, boredom carved into his face. At last he brings the chest's lid down with a brutal, thunderous slam. He yanks her up by the hair, pain searing through her. He loosens his grip and voice-raw promises, "I'll forgive you." He barks, "Tell me everything, right now." She snaps yes and pours every last detail out to him. The operation went off flawlessly, right up until that final heartbeat flipped everything. She revealed their target, Princess Carla. The princess wore a bored grin and deflected every one of their attacks like swatting flies, not breaking a sweat. Rage boils in the prince as he boots his stool across the room. He gapes, stunned that a powerless princess just sent them fleeing. She clutched an artifact that bent instant death itself aside. The prince reels, jaw dropping, as the revelation of this power crashes into him. Lisette swears it's the unbelievable truth. This alone explains why every one of their attacks fell apart. The enemy just snatched a mysterious artifact. That information can decide whether a nation's security stands or falls. It hits him like a punch to the gut. There's a leak in his network. There's no way it's just one artifact. Rage explodes, his grip on power is crumbling. He won't let his half-brother marry the princess. He'd tear the world apart to stop it. That marriage would catapult his inferior rival into power. Lisette cuts him off mid-rant and unloads a flood of new details. She clutches the secret of the artifact's origins. They ripped the artifact from a certain young man's hands. A young man hustled behind a humble market stall. Inside the capital's roaring tavern, a ring of hardened adventurers traded fevered whispers and sharp theories about Gale's whereabouts. Melissa's eyes flashed as she hissed at Cash to pipe down. Melissa slams down a rumor that's been spreading like wildfire. Curiosity burns in Cash as he hunts down the truth behind the rumor. He barked at the waitress, waving her over. She glides to their table, calm radiating from her like cool steel. Cash barks obnoxiously for a barrel of ale. Melissa bursts into a story about an architect. A lone rearguard tore through their ranks and left no one standing. Cash sneers, demanding to know what vanguards are even for. Luke demands to hear every last detail. They lunged and buried the curse of dagger into the man's chest. Luke leans in, grinning, and suggests it sounds like Yale. Cash freezes, eyes wide. The suggestion hits him like a gut punch. He insists, venom lacing his words, that Gale could never succeed. Melissa wields her own cache of information. She snaps Gale ran a stall. He hawked his grotesque, cursed wares, trading nightmares for coin. Finally, the guards tore through their bags and seized every last thing. Cashmot's Gale unleashed a batch of flawed merchandise. Gil kept raking in stacks of cash. He even splurged, walking out with a stack of brand new clothes. A wanted poster glares down from the wall. The army scoured every inch and came up empty. He's vanished without a trace. He funneled every paycheck into a daring fresh start, forging a whole new life. Cash reels drunk, slurring as he forces out a blunt demand for clarification. Norris draws a breath and leans in, ready to unleash his theory. He chews through every story, turning each one over in his mind. Gale's already fled the capital. Shock slammed into the party, yanking a stunned silence from everyone. They picture Gale breezing to effortless triumph, victories tumbling into his lap. He always hawked creepy, skin-crawling trinkets. At the guild, she caught wind of him, his name buzzing through the hall. The guild master gritted his teeth and finally spoke, every word dragged from him like a reluctant confession. He scanned every corner, and the gut punch hit. Gale had vanished. Luke swears the sale's going down somewhere else. Dread grips Cash at the thought he might open a shop. Cash slams back the last of his drink. He roars for more booze. He bellows for them to hurry. Other patrons pile on, their jeers crashing together into a savage roar. They're dead certain the princess will pick up the tab. Their eyes snap wide as Shock slams into them. The waitress hoists two massive barrels, muscles coiling as she strides like a thunderstorm through the room. She slams them onto the table, the impact rattling the room. Cash, soaked to the bone, sputters like a dying engine. He lashes into the waitress, unloading a furious tirade. They gawk, jaws dropping at the sheer, earth-shattering might she wields. She snaps to attention, eavesdropping as they whisper Gale's name. Lysette shoves the facts into her mental file cabinet and slams it shut. Her subordinates rush forward, greeting her with warm, eager voices. She yanks off her maid headdress and flings it away like a discarded mask. She snaps, unloading a blistering rant about the danger and deceit of her undercover work. Her superior barked for confirmation. Intel hit the mark. Their venomous attitude shows up loud and clear. The princess personally handpicked them. They're closing in on Gale. It's all because of her. Gale forged the infamous artifact. Lysette still reels, every twist only deepening the fog in her head. He's vanished into thin air. No one has any idea where he is. They cling to worthless scraps of detail. They insist it's an elaborate disguise, a mask crafted to fool everyone. The wolf pack slams their muzzles down and drinks with savage, desperate gulps. Every word they speak spills priceless intel right into our hands. They'll hand the reins to the party and fall in step behind it. She swore she'd hunt down Gale Hamilton and bring them in herself. Sparks flew and hammers thundered inside the Blacksmith Guild's workshop. A figure strides down the hall. A single hand dives into the project, fingers flying as it brings it to life. Mora plants herself in the doorway, eyes locked on every move inside. Gale leans over his workbench, fingers a blur as he attacks his tasks with fierce focus. He steels himself and vows to give her the thank you she truly deserves. Gratitude floods him as he grips her hand and bellows, thanks for the mind quest. Mora reels as Shock slams into her, stealing her breath. She stood beside him like an unshakable anchor, and calm washed through him. Mora's composure shatters. She's left red-faced and stumbling over every word. She flaunts her top-tier rig like it's a trophy. He roars, eyes blazing, my dream is finally coming true. He fires off a blunt question, and her composure collapses. She's flustered all over again. She freezes, words die on her tongue. She vows to keep backing him, her resolve a steady anchor at his side. She rips into him for sneezing on her. Doubt gnaws at him, are people talking? Sharon stumbles in, dust plastered to her like battle scars. Gratitude surges through him as he thanks her for the workshop. He sought her verdict. He grandly unveils his new, painfully uncool device. Sharna lunges forward, curiosity igniting, and fires off. How does it work? He jabbed his finger at the activation knob. A nozzle thrust out from the device. Raw energy shot out, crackling from the gaping opening. It rends the air with a petrifying curse, turning living flesh into cold stone. Seething, she snaps, "Are you going to petrify me?" He scoffs, daring anyone to defend the item's demand. "Sharon, I rip open supply and demand and show you exactly how it works." The town is running on empty, no building materials, nothing left to build with. Here, stone fetches a king's ransom. She's struck by a lightning bolt of genius. She launches into a fiery explanation of her idea. How could he possibly erect anything in that merciless sea of sand? He fires off a string of brutally tough strategies. Sharona urges pressing the sand down into solid bricks. Gale snaps transporting those materials is impossible. She stares at the cracked riverbed, water's nearly gone. But then a brilliant idea hits him like a lightning bolt. Gale's contraption could snap sand into stone. Shock slams into Gale and Mora, leaving them frozen. A spark ignites in his eyes. He sees exactly how to use it to build something massive. Sharna snaps her goggles up, locks eyes with him, and speaks straight at him. She grins and hails his jaw-dropping skills right to his face. Gale echoed her words, astonishment cracking her voice. He's slammed by a tidal wave of pure joy, grinning so wide it feels like he might burst. Farm Edge is crippled by a relentless shortage of stone. She roared that his invention would solve it. She dangles a lavish reward if it actually pays off. She raves about his jaw-dropping skills and electric talent. One colossal problem stands in the way. It screams a brutal, unapologetic lack of style. Honestly, she snaps, jabbing a finger at him. She can't deny his cursive tools are jaw-droppingly impressive. Praise hits Gale like a surprise thunderbolt. He goes betrayed and stammers, totally rattled. She hires him again to craft one more piece. She demanded to know about the smaller materials. Gale's jaw tightened as she said they were impossible to process. The petrification organ lay undeveloped, a dormant husk, no power, no form. Disappointment crashes into her the moment her eyes lock on the venom machine. Gale scoffs, doubting poison could ever be useful. She snaps, this is an agricultural city. Pests and vermin swarm like a living tide, overrunning everything, a massive, relentless problem. She leans in, voice like ice and steel, and snaps, do you understand the value of poison? He swears he can pull it off. Once he forged poison talismans. He rattles off the exact corpse parts needed to assemble the undead. He alone must hunt down and seize every material with his own hands. A lightning bolt of a new idea streaks through Sharon's mind. Her grin ripped across her face, crackling with manic excitement. Her pulse spikes as she uncovers the full force of his abilities. She orders Gimli to fetch the materials. Joy exploded in Gale's chest the moment the generous offer landed. He thrusts the decade oil holder into view. Its stench slammed into my face, unbearably, revoltingly foul. Mora's mind raced, who would want this? She swallows the next question and lets silence take over. Sharona snaps, eyes blazing, focus on our requests. Gale's cheeks flared crimson, joy bursting out of him. He'd finally found a purpose. He bolts to his workshop, eagerness crackling through his veins. She braces, steels her nerves, and primes the new device for testing. Mora steps forward with a grin and offers to fling the door open for her. Sharon flashes a mischievous grin and shoots, so why am I even here? She and Gale have been tearing through quests, one daring raid after another. Her thoughts snap to Gale, and a gentle smile blooms on her lips. Sharon leans in, hanging on every syllable, a knowing glint sparking in her eyes. A victorious grin split her face. They'd landed on a good place. The wolf pack stands refitted and bristling with fierce pride. Their carriage hurtles toward the city, wheels thundering like war drums. They erupt into raucous laughter over the princess's fortune. Cash crowed about his new mithril sword, parading it like a trophy. Melissa and Norris flaunt their new gear, grins blazing as they parade every slick detail. Luke bellows, flaunting his magical beast armor. Cash snarled, Gale's curse is irrelevant. Now they burn with a certainty, nothing can stop them. The assassins ride on, misery sealing their mouths and silence choking every breath. Cash reels, unable to fathom why no one applies to join. Their legs above what most people can handle. She's convinced money can erase every problem. They close in on the gloomy girl and roar, state your role. Lysette rips out a painfully awkward laugh. Her team rains down item-based support. Cash snaps, we're just porters. He snapped, be grateful for the ride. Her team huddles in the shadows, quietly hatching a cold, inevitable revenge. Cash barks, take the luggage. The princess is footing the bill for every bite they wolf down. Norris's words jolt him right back to their escort quest. A drunken Cash snarls at him, slurring, shut up. He snarls that their faces ruin the fine wine. The assassins explode into furious complaints about their situation. A magical flare rips into the sky. A blinding flare hangs over the forest, turning the treetops into shards of light. Lysette's expression hardens into a lethal, ice-cold focus. Her team peered out, every sense snapping to attention. Caravan guards snap armor into place, heft spears and swords, and plant their boots to brace for the coming battle. They scramble mercenaries to intercept. An order thunders down to the adventurers, protect the carriages. From the forest, a shadow-cloaked figure stares, its unblinking gaze cutting through the trees. The forest erupted into motion. Leaves whirled, branches snapped, creatures bolted. A nightmarish alliance of monsters crashes in, unleashing a merciless onslaught. The captain roars commands, whipping his expanded escorts into formation. The monsters surge forward and slam into the caravan guards. The carriage shatters into a spray of splinters. A guard barrels in, breathless and frantic, yelling that he's spotted the monster's boss. The colossal behemoth explodes into view, towering over them like a living mountain. A guard's composure shatters. He screams and bolts as the S-rank monster looms. Her team finally admits defeat. They're no match for the monsters. This fight's practically unwinnable. The odds are brutally stacked against us. Rushing them head-on is flat-out impossible. The pack teams with colossal B-rank monsters. Her subordinates press her to flee with them. The wolf pack dozes, wrapped in blissful ignorance. Cold, hard cash decides whether they live or die. All Lysette can do is exhale a sharp, exasperated sigh. Lysette barked an order, launching her unit to intercept. She snaps, eyes blazing, why must we wait? Her superior name-drops the S-rank party. Lysette exploded, calling the party stupid. A surge of recognition crashes through her. She finally knows who the party is. The wolf pack slams back drinks in the scene. Her superior roars that they can fight. Lysette goads them with a razor grin, baiting them into an all-out battle. A blood-curdling scream rips through the air, heralding the behemoth's brutal attack. The wolf pack freezes, eyes darting as they scramble to understand what's happening. Cash snaps, seething, railing about the screaming echoing from outside. Her comrades pounce, pinning Lysette in place. Then you spot the carriage screech to a halt. Cash bellows to the coachman, his voice cutting through the air. The behemoth barrels into the carriage, roaring like thunder. Norris and Luke screamed, terror clawing at their throats. Lysette zeroed in and revealed the spark that ignited the chaos. The behemoth parades the local orcs. His breath catches as the behemoth's dominant power slams into him like a freight train. The beast bristles with savage violence, utterly overwhelming to behold. A hulking monster towers over the trembling Cash. Lysette and her unit lie scattered, shards of a fractured formation. Cash gaped disbelief blazing in his eyes. The behemoth's colossal legs crashed into the earth, each stomp a thunderclap. The whole wolf pack is hurled into chaos. Lysette snapped her tongue, a sharp click laced with simmering annoyance. Her assassin plunged onto the beast. She thundered, demanding the S-rank party act. The behemoth unleashed a bone-rattling growl aimed straight at them. A thunderous roar rips across the battlefield. Lysette jolts as the air snaps open around her. Pure terror slammed into everyone, pinning them rigid and rooting them to the spot. The wolf pack froze, every body rigid, eyes wide with stunned disbelief. Lysette's voice slices through the chaos, snapping them back to the mission. Cash and Norris feel their resolve snap back, burning fierce and bright. Melissa steels herself, every muscle coiling and breath sharpening as she readies for the coming fight. Luke too steels himself for battle, muscles coiling and resolve igniting. They gaped as the monster's colossal form dwarfed everything around it. They gloat, convinced the beast stands no chance. The crowd explodes into thunderous cheers, lifting the wolf pack on a wild, electric wave. They bask in the crowd's adoration, feeding on every roar. Her team watched morale rocket upward. The crowd holds its breath, every eye fixed as a coordinated attack readies to strike. Lysette's eyes blaze. She knows this is S-rank power. The behemoth swipes them aside like ragdolls, sending bodies tumbling through the air. Her team gapes frozen, eyes wide, faces wiped clean of any expression. They peered down at the aftermath, breath catching at the ruined scene spread beneath them. Cash sprawls across the ground, utterly defeated. A scream rips from her as she openly doubts the sheer might of their S-rank power. The behemoth towers over her team, dwarfing them with a hulking, oppressive presence. Lesser monsters erupt from the shadows, swarming and pouncing on the caravan as it scrambles to escape. Lysette roared, yanking her remaining subordinates back into the fray. The wolf pack bolted, ditching their mission without a flicker of shame. Prince Burial's smile seared into memory, impossible to forget. Lysette snorts, scorn blazing in her eyes as she mocks the absurdity before her. She bellows her group's true identity. She snaps the order, her assassins spring like shadows and strike. They must fight from the shadows, striking fast while keeping their positions hidden. A snarling behemoth rockets straight at the assassin. The assassin cuts the beast down with ruthless, effortless precision. Lysette charges in alone, baiting the behemoth and dragging its fury away. Her superior's wishes summon instant good fortune. She charges straight at the beast, fury roaring in her chest. She plants her feet, locks eyes, and faces down the growling behemoth. She slips from the darkness, stalking the beast. She plants her foot on the floorboards, no creak, no whisper, just a shadow's touch. She rockets forward, eyes locked as she zeroes in on the blind spot. I snap open the behemoths with a thunderous crack. It roars and sweeps her away in a violent, all-consuming gust. She touches down, shock ripping through her, and her eyes lock onto the woman. Ambushes crumble against it, traps and sneak attacks always fail. She opts for a head-on strike. She lunged, driving a venom-tipped dagger home. Hope claws at her chest as she strains for one decisive, fatal strike. The behemoth bats away her kick dagger with a thunderous swipe. Her eyes lock onto a split-second opening. She lunges, the second dagger slicing true. Shames lunges to slash its throat. Its hide shrugged off her blade and sent it spinning aside. Her eyes snap to the impact. She realizes the attack ricocheted away. The behemoth snaps her massive back with thunderous force. A dark thought flashes, she imagines slicing into its flesh. She plunged her blade into its vulnerable eye. She jeers at it, daring the poison to strike. A guttural, bone-rattling growl ripped from the behemoth. Shock rips through her, it's still moving. Bleeding and battered, the beast refuses to fall, lashing out with furious, desperate strikes. Her eyes lock on a strange, toxic mist slithering straight toward her. Her eyes snap wide as a brutal truth strikes. It's resistant to poison. She yanks out her trump card and slams it down. She staggers as the prince's dangerous gift rips back into her mind. He roared a warning. She could turn into a demon.